I guess I'll call to order the Housing, Health, and Public Safety Committee meeting for Thursday, March 14th, 2020. I think if we can amend the agenda a little bit, we'll combine number 3 and number 5 together, seeing as we have to go through number 3 and number 5 anyway.
Sure.
So if we can just do that, and we might speed this up a little bit, since we do have a lot of bigger items.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start with the ordinance regulating chronic nuisance premise within the city of Norwood. This is something that Chris and I had been going over for a few weeks. We've contacted Chief Kramer to go over it a little bit, and he sent in his ideas or revisions that he would like to see. Some of those are in this draft version that says draft on it. And then Mr. Moore and Mr. Gary also came in today with a few questions or revision ideas that they would like to see as well. Mr. Gabbard, have you had a chance to read over this yet?
No, I didn't, but I've glanced just briefly over, but as we go through it.
Okay. So essentially what this ordinance, what we're looking to do is, one, assist the property owners that need help in getting their property in order, and two, to help the city better regulate the properties that have become a nuisance, whether that be police department or health department. I did not include the building department in here. That, if we choose to include the building department, we can. But I feel like they've got enough teeth in their ordinances that they can kind of handle what they have outside of this ordinance that we're bringing up here. So essentially, I've got it lined out with definitions, explaining what a chronic nuisance is, what nuisance activity is going to be defined as, what an occupant is, an operator, an owner, person associated with, which means any person that may patronize or visit or waits to enter a premise that causes problems. So let's say somebody's outside of an apartment building waiting on their buddy, and they've got their stereo turned way up that's rocking the street, so to speak, and the police end up coming. That kind of puts the building into that nuisance category. That kind of helps assist the building owner in figuring out who's causing the problems that don't live there, essentially. And then I've got it laid out as to what a property or premise is, what a unit is, and then we go into section 2. If there's anything within that first section that we want to discuss, we can. Same with you guys, Mr. Moore, Mr. Gary. I think Mr. Moore and Mr. Gary had on here, do we want to exclude marijuana offense per the referendum? My opinion is we don't exclude that, because it's still state law, it's still federal law that marijuana is illegal, and that helps with our tracking of the drug abuse within a structure and who's utilizing those drugs within the structure. We may not cite them to the city of Norwood for that drug offense, but it helps the landlords with those that say, hey, you can't smoke in here, but some people end up getting by with smoking within the residence, or other apartments don't like that somebody's smoking marijuana.
Yeah, it's my understanding too, within the new laws in Ohio, it allows you to have the marijuana card, and that is not to be smoked per se.
Right.
It's more for like edibles
Oils,
and stuff like that.
oils and edibles, yeah.
If you're coming up on a property where you smell marijuana, that's, in my opinion of the law, abusing it. So that's why I kind of like that as well.
Do you have any?
No, the only thing is smell is, you can be deceived on it. It could be incense, you know, vape pens that,
Yeah.
because people like that particular scent, we'd have to be careful with that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have a problem leaving it in or out. I'm not one that's ever partaked anyway, so it's.
I mean, if also if somebody's sitting there on the porch smoking weed or marijuana, and the police roll up and see it going on, they can mark that down in their call for service as they did it, and that can be marked on the chronic nuisance spreadsheet. So I think we just leave that one in. The other one is loud or dangerous dogs. The note in here says Cincinnati has this, but barking dogs. What?
Well, it's just like this whole process is like Cincinnati's version, the versions, that's the other versions, I think Portsmouth, whoever, but these are places where primarily there's like serious criminal activity that's going on, and that's the purpose of the ordinance. And they toss in a bunch of other things. The question is, if somebody is cited twice in 30 days for a barking dog, and I mean, do you want a letter to go out that, hey, you're in danger of becoming a chronic nuisance, and if it happens again 2 weeks later, then we can issue a citation for $500. I mean, that's just, I'm just wondering, because that's included in here, that's kind of the text that's in here, and it may just be, well, it's there's two, I think there's two schools of thought on a lot of this kind of thing. One is you specifically lay out all the things you think are bad and make them against the law. And the other one is you make pretty much everything against the law, and you kind of bring in a lot of activity. So it's not nobody's going to be on the radar for a barking dog as a practical matter is the thought. I mean, I'm guessing is the thought that the barking dog is not going to be really on the radar. But if it's a place that's had 2 or 3 drug arrests, 2 or 3 drug convictions, and has been a problem for a whole bunch of other things, well, we'll tack on the barking dog. And that's just, I'm just raising that issue so that you can see that a barking dog, probably not the whole point of this, but that the language is so broad it carries that in. That's all. I just wanted to point that out to the committee so that you guys know, hey, this is what's in here.
Well, I mean, yeah, I got a dog, and she's outside quite a bit. I mean, we don't leave her outside overnight and that, but there are some people that do that, and they have dogs out there barking 3, 4 in the morning, 2 in the morning, stuff like that. I think that's more what we're looking at here.
Kind of,
because that is a nuisance, and this gives an avenue for residents to kind of abate that situation, in my opinion.
I like what Keith was saying. I like the fact that I'm a fat guy, so I'll use a food analogy. You keep layering condiments on the sandwich. Just a barking dog in itself is not going to do anything, but and you add drug offense in there and some other offenses, and now you got a bigger sandwich that the city can take a bite into and actually do something with. So I like that kind of.
And I added it in there kind of like, thinking from a police officer standpoint, you always look for that little piece of probable cause that ends up being this $1 million drug bust.
Right.
Now, that doesn't happen every day,
Yeah.
but every once in a while you may find a small baggie of marijuana in the car, go out for a search warrant, and end up getting a big-time drug ring. Doesn't happen every day, and I think that's kind of where I was going with this.
Yeah.
Was, yes, it's included in, but it's just kind of included in there as a, maybe this will help us get to those more chronic nuisance.
Yeah.
If I could just, this is an example of trying to figure out how you envision this working. How is whoever it is that's going to send a notice to somebody that they may be in danger of becoming a chronic nuisance property owner, how did they become aware of whatever the issues are? How intensely is the thought that this is going to be followed up on, that every grass complaint is going to be logged somehow and forwarded on? Does it require a conviction of an offense before it counts? It's just like, I'm not sure how you envision this working as a practical matter? Who's the one that's going to be tracking all this? Who's the one that's going to be doing that kind of thing, and how aggressively are they going to be on it?
Well, like, so if a let's say police department goes on an overdose run, okay? And they show up and male, female gets Narcaned, and they don't want to go to the hospital. 2 hours later, they show up again at the same residence for the same thing. Well, that's all going to be tracked through the police department. Let's say the police department goes out for a barking dog, and they issue a warning for a barking dog and say, hey, look, you need to bring that dog in. You know, the dog's been barking for 4 hours from what we've been told. Just bring the dog in, you know. Even if they don't get an answer at the door, that's a call for service from the police department. And what we're going to look for is the police department themselves track on a spreadsheet what residents they seem to go to all the time. So let's say, for instance, Xavier Properties. You know, they go up to Xavier Properties 3 and 4 times for loud music or a loud party. That fits under the disorderly house ordinance, which is involved with this. So that would be tracked on that spreadsheet as we've been to that 3-unit building 4 times this month or 4 times this year. You know, that's where the tracking comes in. Same way with the health department. If the health department goes out for vehicles being abandoned in the driveway, or junk being out in the driveway, or junk being in the front yard, I know I've had a letter from the building department when I lived on Carthage for a couch that was on the front porch for less than a week. I was waiting to put it out for the trash. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it kind of goes into that where the health department can come in and track, you know, hey, we cited, or we left this note for grass, or we left this note for junk, and then send it over to the safety service director.
Yeah. So like, I think what essentially we would be banking on to enforce this would be, you know, the police department responds to calls for service of, hey, we got a fight over here, hey, we got this going on up here, whatever it is that's covered under this, would kind of put a report together to give to like the safety service director, the health department doing the same and giving that to them so it can be tracked, and say, okay, man, there's an OD over here, and then they also got dinged by the health department. Well, that's 2, so we're going to send the letter and then send the other letter, and then now the second letter will have the fine schedule on it, because you already got the first one asking you to respond on how you're going to abate the problem. Then you either didn't or it wasn't abated, and now you're getting another call, whether it's the health department or the police department. So you're getting a second letter now saying, hey, now you're in danger of becoming a nuisance property. Here's the fine schedule for further action. And all these calls would come into this. And like the different ordinances that this references would be tied into it. And just an easier way, in our opinion, to enforce it. So if I get a call for, you know, assault at my house, and then I get a letter, and I respond to that, and I try to handle the problem. Well, a week later, I get, you know, another one. Now I got that second letter that tells me the fine schedule. So after that, the third time, if I got a junk car in my driveway, then it's been sitting there, and my neighbors are calling on it to be a nuisance. That third time, I'm getting a fine. And what we would like is for the police department and the health department to kind of, each response they go to, or each inquiry they have on a property, to kind of compile that information and kind of centralize it into whoever's going to be doing the citations, the letters, and that kind of thing. So there'd be something tracked on that property. Once you get a call to that property, now your property's on our list, and we're going to track it for that 12-month period. And if you get a certain amount, then you get fined, or you get a letter, 2 letters, and then you enter the fine schedule. Is I think how we're trying to work this. Did I miss anything there?
The beginning of the year, several years ago, Mayor Williams had put together a task force. I would like to see that reinstituted, and I spoke with the mayor about it, and I just know he's been busy, he's not done that, and I think Keith's already, or Tim's probably already aware of it. I would like to see us have a task force that consists of the law department, police department, fire department, health department, building department, all 5 of them. And maybe every Tuesday morning, they meet and they go to these properties, and because I'm sure every department has a list of properties already on their radar that they've had, the fire department's made multiple calls or whatever. So when they literally go to that property and you're standing on the sidewalk and all these different departments are looking at this property, then we can, the building department say, well, I can see 3 violations right now. The health department said, well, our records show, because they know which properties they're going to.
Right.
They select,
Yeah.
3 or 4 properties each week that somebody from one of those departments, excuse me, or any of us, would be able to submit and say, hey, we'd like you to check out this property. And that would be one thing.
That's a good idea, because for one,
Yeah.
a lot of those departments could fall under this instead of citing under their own ordinances.
Yeah.
And having 25 different citations or
And the thing
25
is,
notes.
the law department may have gotten a couple different calls on a particular property, and they think it's just them. But
Yeah.
when they're all talking and they all look at that particular property, they say, okay, we're going to look at these 3 properties today, and they all go and they look in their records, and the police department says, we've actually made 25 calls in the past year at this one property alone. The fire department says, yeah, we've had 19, and the health department says we've had 2 different violations. Nobody knew that what the other
Right.
finger was doing on the hand.
Right.
And now everybody knows, and we realize this really is a problem, because
Yeah.
every department has had issues with this. It's just that, because of lack of communication
And
like
that's-
that. I would just like to see, hopefully we can encourage the mayor to put that together, to have a representative from each of those, that they go out once a
Yeah,
week.
and I think that's a great idea, because I think some of the things Keith is struggling with here is how are we going to enforce this?
Yeah.
Who's going to be in charge of it, am I right? And I
'Cause in
think,
theory, this could be hundreds of parcels.
Oh,
The
yeah.
question is, what's the? and
I
so
have no doubt it is.
In some, that would technically fall under this in one way or another. And
Yeah.
the question is, who is it intended to be that broad sweeper? Or is it intended to pick up because actually, when I first started as law director, we did that like once a month, or every couple weeks, and it was, and we did it, it's just like, well, here's the ones, and so what can we do? And so is it designed for those? Like, these are the ones that everybody knows are a giant pain, or is it designed to sweep up every violation that might fall under this?
Well, I think we
And that's
start with
kind of
those
the
big
question.
ones.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
the
I'm
big
sure
ones
every
would-
department's
yeah,
probably
the-
got a handful.
the big ones would definitely
Of the big-
receive the
We hit
first
those,
attention.
and then we just, and I think it's a fluid thing. It's constantly, we're reevaluating.
Yeah.
So we hit the top 25 properties over the next 6 months that we know were really bad or sooner, and then what's next? A councilman throws to that task force.
Hey, I
Can
got
we
this
check out
problem.
this particular
Yeah.
property? And they look at it and they're like, really, nobody's had any complaints on
Yeah.
this except for you've got a neighbor emailing you,
Yeah, and I think that would be very beneficial, because what I've been doing is I've had probably in the last 2 weeks alone, probably 5-6 different residents reach out to me about multiple properties selling the same property, and I've been trying to get with Kramer, emailing him about these properties, and he's been doing a lot of work there trying to look at these. But I think part of the confusion and the aggravation here is that it's like, some departments are like, well, what can we do? How can we go forward with this? And the residents, I know a lot of residents are burnt out with calling because nothing happens, and it's just allowed to keep happening in a way. And even if that's not our current intent, is to allow it to keep happening, that's the passive
That's the
product.
message that's being sent.
Yeah, that's the passive message that's being sent, and the product that's being delivered is we're allowing this to happen because there isn't a clear way to figure this out, and there's not a aggressive approach to it to put an end to it. And there might be a lot of people that are upset or aggravated or don't think they're being treated fairly with this, but this has been a decade long, if not a little bit longer, kind of a problem that we've been fighting, but like Mr. Gabbard said, all the fingers on the hand aren't working together. So not everybody knows exactly how bad this property or that property is. When, if we can get them all together and see, now we can really start, dropping the hammer on some of these properties to get them out and spread that word of, hey, don't come move to Norwood if you're about that rink-a-dink stuff, because we're not going to allow it.
Yeah,
And
we
that's
don't
the
want to be
message we want
picky
sent.
and rinky-dink like that, but
Tim, did you want to speak? Because
Yeah,
you're the one that's contacted by the department saying, listen, what about this? And there's 3 or 4
Yeah.
departments that are working together, and there's a list. Tim could give you the list off the top of his head, I'm sure, of the top 25, or here's some ones. A lot of them have problems where, like, there's no owner.
Yeah. Well, there
There's
are
no way
owners.
to
Somebody
get hold of
owns
the
it. Somebody
owner.
owns it.
We have one, the worst one in town is the owner currently has a KPS. Didn't show up for court. So there's a warrant out
Yeah.
right now for his arrest, and it's
And
been
he's
that
under
way
federal
for...
indictment
He's
for
under
tax evasion.
federal
Well,
indictment.
so in
and
this-
he has not been anywhere for like
And
6
Well,
months
in
ago.
this, then we need to be dinging that property for any violations, finding them, and putting those on as liens on the
The
property.
same thing is we can issue liens.
Yeah.
Yes, we absolutely can, but then we're stuck with it. It's just one of those things.
Well, I mean,
I'm just as a practical matter.
If
So
we end up getting stuck with
But-
it and taking the property, then we can auction that property
Yeah.
off.
we don't
can-
want that one.
There's always something out there for somebody, and if we can make a couple $1,000s, I'll take it.
What we really need in that property is a tax foreclosure, because nobody's paid taxes on it for about 8 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how the treasurer's, the county treasurer's office is allowing that to happen, but they are, or they have. But here's what I want you to understand, I think. There is, although the the inspection officers are not meeting on a weekly basis, I can tell you that the health department inspector and building department's property maintenance inspectors meet daily. Sometimes on other things, but the point is there's plenty of communication, in my view, between health department inspector, building department inspector, fire inspector, and the police when they're involved with police stuff. And we prosecute stuff in the mayor's court, and then we bring the most egregious offenders downtown if we feel like we need more tools in the box than, fine and court costs.
Yeah.
And we've done that repeatedly. For example, this guy that owns this property that we're thinking of, I met with that property, for that property this morning, with a patrol officer, building inspector, zoning inspector, and myself, and fire inspector.
Yeah. Well,
Just this morning.
I think even just having that insight of maybe a tax foreclosure is the easiest way to go, I think is important. That's why having the law department, having somebody there, so we can have like you said, the police chief, fire chief, health and the building department inspectors, a law department representative meeting on a weekly basis, talking about these properties and looking through the ordinance, saying, oh, this, and this, yeah, we can get them, and have an insight like that. Well, this might be a little harder route. The tax route is probably the easiest route to go.
Aside from easy, what we need is a clear title on the property. And the way to get that is through a tax foreclosure,
Yeah.
then a sheriff's sale. And once the court approves the sheriff's sale, then there isn't much of a problem as to clear title.
Yeah.
Because we do want somebody to buy it and redevelop it.
what
But
streets is
at this
You don't gotta
point-
get an actual
at
property,
this
which
point,
street.
if let's say the current owner conveyed it to us, there'd still be all kinds of title problems that we don't
Yeah.
want.
Right.
Yeah, and this isn't so much about encumbering properties as
Right.
much as it is alleviating the issues. Some of the bad landlords out there that aren't doing a good enough job, that are just letting terror reign on their properties, this is going to affect them and their bottom line. That's why, like our fee schedule, you come right where it hurts and where it all matters, and that's how you get people's
And-
attention, is in the pocketbook.
And I think one property is Mills Avenue. There's a is it Mills?
Yeah, it's
No, Tilden.
There's one until
There's one
yeah,
until
there's- yeah.
one, yeah.
That
Cleveland.
seems to be a chronic problem. I've gotten emails about it. I know he's gotten emails about it. And when we try to take care of it and do something about it, or a resident calls, they seem to get backlash. As if, well, I don't know what else I'm going to do with this property.
Yeah.
Well, let's start citing somebody like that who has 50 bags of trash out in the front yard for a year and a half. Just start citing them under something like this.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Would you mind? I mean, some new blood. I'm Mike Weigel. I own apartments. I have my whole life. Not since 1988 in Norwood. And maybe I'm missing something, but like on the house he's talking about, the guy's got capuses out for him. You can charge him $50 a call, $500 a call, $5,000 a call. You're not really going to solve the problem.
Correct. You're not going to solve the problem immediately. However, you will get to that point where we start putting liens on the property.
Yep.
And then one becomes an issue for the property owner to sell, or we take it over as the city.
And I get all that, and there is something to be said for that. But a simpler way to do this is, maybe I'm missing something, but if the police would just go, I mean, you used an example of loud music from a car. I mean, I'm using concrete examples and trying to get, and I, as a landlord, you guys want me to control other people. Now, if it's a couch on the porch or a mouse in the basement and I can control it, you find me all you want, because I'm going to fix it and I'm going to take care of it. But when you're telling me I have to control this guy out in the parking lot picking someone up, or if it happens 2 or 3 times or too many times, that's a problem for me. But why don't the police write that person a ticket when they're there? When they get a call for loud music in an apartment or whatever, they go and they don't do anything. They tell them to
well,
turn it down.
when a police shows up on a call like that, if it's a violation of the Norwood ordinance, they would get a fine.
Yeah.
They would get fined. If
Yes.
somebody's fighting in the parking lot, those people are going to get
If they're fighting in
fined.
the parking lot, if it's
Yeah.
a loud noise complaint, first thing the police officer does is come over and say, hey, can you turn that down?
Yeah.
Correct.
Because, well, we don't want to drag somebody into court when we can just ask them to politely turn it down. So
Correct.
that's a noise violation that all we have is it may be recorded as a call for service or maybe not. And then that's the thing. That's the question is like the one on Tilden. I don't know what the deal is with that house on Tilden. If it's been like that for a year and a half, did the health department know? The building department know? Did anybody? Because if there's been a dumpster out there for a year and a half, that's a violation of the building code.
From what I've been told is they've called and nobody's come out, and then when somebody did finally come out, they got a lot of attitude from the person that came out. And I did get,
Have you spoken to the inspectors?
I haven't spoke with the inspectors, no.
I talked to Dale about it on a few different occasions when we, obviously when it hit Facebook and we started getting lit up about it. And then Dale and Larry Brinkmeyer went out, and he said as we pulled up in our cars, there was a lady and a looked like a girl, he said, that were taking the trash and throwing them in that dumpster. There's a dumpster in the driveway. But then they took off when they saw 2 city vehicles pull up. But then the next day, they must have come back later and finished, because I drove by, because, my daughter lives right there. And I drove by to check because I was going to go, and there was some other people said that they would meet me there, and we were going to put them into the dumpster. There's a dumpster in the driveway. Now, I reached out because that's where I grew up, was right there on Carter at the end of Tilden. So I reached out, and I knew who the previous owners were, and asked him, I'm like, do you still own that property? What's the deal with that? What's going on? He said that his mom still owned it. She lost it to the bank. And he said, so they came in and changed the locks. He said, and we went to get the rest of their property out of the house and couldn't even do that. And then somebody bought it, or is trying to buy it from the bank. They put the dumpster in the driveway. They filled one up, and then they put the second one in, and an empty one. And then they got shut down by the bank because the bank said, since we're in this Corona thing, they can't. It's still showing that the bank owns it, and for liability reasons, they didn't want anything going on the property because it's still in their name. So the real owners, I guess, can't even do the rehab on it because I guess the auditor's page or whatever is still listing the bank, that's what he said, because that the dumpster is blocking he said, my son still has, his car is still in that backyard. He can't even get that out of there because they won't move the dumpster because of all this. So that's the story that I got on where it is. I don't know if it's because things are a little, we're behind because things have kind of shut down some of these offices.
The recorder's office hasn't been shut down for 18 months.
Yeah, yeah, but
that's the
I
kind
guess, so the bank had it for a long time, and then,
So there's a lot of them, and that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is like that one, that looks really bad, and we should do something. Right now, the situation is, and I don't know what was going on 18 months ago, but over the last 3 months, we have, if we, to follow this, we would send the notice to the bank, and the bank doesn't own it anymore. And so that's the kind of, there's a lot of situations. Now, if that's what it's aimed at, that's fine. Or is it aimed at, this is the drug house, there's fights, there's stolen property, there are some that are really bad, and it's like, yes, we need to get the landlord's attention because they're constantly renting to the same people. It just rotates through, it's a shooting gallery, whatever it is.
And that is
That's
a
a
lot
different,
going on.
that's a
lot
kind
of
of
what
different
this is
approach,
aimed
so,
at.
yeah.
That's a lot of what this is aimed at, is those chronic landlords that don't care and just keep, hey, 3 months, we'll evict this person, but we'll bring in the same exact person for 3 more months, and they'll do the same things. For instance, when I was working at Gulf Manor, we would go for a constant family fight at this one building every third day. Every third day I was at that building. Now, I can tell you, when I was off work for my 2 days off, there were at least 2 or 3 runs in between there. So it was, we're looking at 5 to 7, 8 runs a shift or day at this one building for this one family. And we couldn't do anything because, 1, nobody wanted to file any charges. 2, we didn't see anything going on, so we couldn't file anything based on our vision and our sight, except basically send them a letter saying, hey, you need to knock it off. We're going to cite you for noise ordinance because they were bothering the other 3 tenants within the building. But that's the only teeth we had, and that's something that I am also looking to I want to try and cut down on our police runs. Let them focus on bigger things than these little runs to, Xavier properties or families fighting, I don't want to see them going on 9, 10 runs to the same building for the same exact problem. Eventually, we've got to hold somebody accountable for that.
Otherwise, we're going to continue to do what we've been doing and allow it to continue to be happening. And there are a lot of factors that go into this, and some cases are going to be harder than others, and some cases are going to have to be doled out the fine structure that may be differently than others because there's different circumstances on, like you said, who owns it and where it's kind of at in the process. But that's just extra work that we can't shy away from. I mean, in my opinion, I feel like the best we can do is get something that's kind of clear enough that can be used as a guide of, hey, the police officers can tell them, hey, we can't, nobody answering right now. We can't kick the door in and arrest them all for nothing. But this is going to count as a run and towards the nuisance ordinance. So the residents kind of have a little peace of mind. If we can get a task force together, they can look at these properties and say, all right, this property has 2. Have we sent these letters out? No, let's make sure we get them letters out. So that way they know. No, third time they see it, boom, let's issue the citation. Some citations we might not see back. We might, like to the guy he's got bigger problems than a $500 fine from Norwood, it sounds like. But at the same time, we do it anyway. We do it anyway. Why? Because it's in the ordinance, it's in the law. It's what we're going to do, because we're not going to send that message that, well, we might or we might not. No, we need to do it hard, and it needs to be aggressive. We need to send a clear message that we're not going to tolerate it.
Yeah, and if that's the case, and that's what I'm trying to get at, is because if that's the deal, that it's a call for service is the standard. A nuisance activity has occurred because it's a call for service, right?
Not like if somebody fell down the stairs or something. That's not what we're talking about.
Right. But I mean, a call for service for one of the things listed here. We get emails on a regular basis from somebody who does not get along with their neighbor, in 30 days, that person is over because he has complained about one thing or another 3 times in the last 30 days. And it's not, I'm just saying, but I mean, if that's your intention, if that's the way we are gonna come down as hard as we can on every single thing, that's one thing. I mean, that is gonna be I can't see, then we're gonna run into due process problems. I mean, if that's the case,
Yeah.
it's like, my neighbor called because he doesn't like me, he called the health department 3
Yeah,
times.
we know that's gonna happen.
You know what I mean?
There's
Versus-
people out there that are gonna nitpick everything,
And that's
we
why I think if
understand.
we have a task force that's objective, that can look at it and determine, circumstances, because,
Well,
even
that's-
as a police officer, we go out and, we see somebody going 27 miles an hour and we stop them and go, do we want to give a ticket for 27 miles an hour? Yes, it's against the law because the sign says 25.
Yeah, maybe we give police officers a little leeway there where they say,
Or
hey, man,
the
this
task
neighbor
force or whatever.
here is calling about, we're showing up, these people aren't doing anything.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of a, kind of a,
And if it's a task force wants to screen these, then that's who should be sending out the letters.
yeah, I think that's right. I think you're right, because that was one of your big questions on who's doing that and who's doing this part of it. And I think if we can put a task force together, I think that would kind of solve a couple of those things.
Well, using the disorderly house ordinance that Keith, I think, advocated coming through being ordained, there was a drug house over on, I think it was on Warren. It was a few months ago. And there were a series of runs for ODs and whatnot. And we got the police chief to issue one of those disorderly house letters. And the property was owned by an older couple that lived out in, I want to say Claremont County or Brown County or something. And their adult son had all his drug buddies over there living out of this house. When the elderly couple got the letter, a daughter intervened and came in, got rid of everybody, listed the house for sale, and it was sold, and I think it's being improved.
That sounds exactly like what we want to
The
see.
point is, it's already working.
Well,
The point is that's kind of the about who's going to send the letters out, because
Yeah.
there are very few disorderly house letters that go out, and there's a lot of properties they could go out to, and
Yeah.
that's the thing is is it going to be a blanket, and to make sure that, and just from my experience with the disorderly house ordinance is a perfect example, is I would suggest before council passes this or even has the first reading on it, you guys need to talk to the people that are actually going to do the work under here and get their buy-in. Because if you don't have that, nothing's going to happen.
Well, I do know we've talked with Chief Kramer. He had a few suggestions, which I've made in the draft version today, and I'll send that to both of you, because I think you guys have the original.
Yeah, we got his email with the
I have a draft version that I made a few changes to.
Okay.
There'll be another draft version, obviously, after today, because that's why I wanted to bring it into the committee and discuss and see what we wanted to change or what we wanted to amend on this before we took it out. But, and Chief Kramer, he sent me his questions and things, and I amended to what he wanted to do, and we'll get to those because they're in section 3, 2, and 3. And then I think the one that we discussed, Mr. Moore, about the BZA, maybe we change that to the task force if we can get a task force set up.
But, I mean, so before we get back into this and what we're working on, I think the way I would like to see it go is a good suggestion from Mr. Gabbard and Mr. Moore of a task force and kind of screening these and deciding, hey, we're sending letters to these. So all these properties as a whole from all the departments are getting looked at one time. Heads are sitting down together looking. And maybe having the head of that be the safety service director who would then issue letters and citations.
Correct.
So the safety service director would be the head of the monster working with the department heads or chiefs or whatever.
And especially with the help that,
Yeah.
that we're getting now with the administrative assistants, they can also assist with that.
I was gonna say, maybe the new guy, Tom,
Yep.
could
Correct.
be the one that compiles the list and follows up on that, and he could even send a letter out
Right.
from,
Yeah.
you know, this
On
is
behalf
from
of-
the mayor, on behalf of the mayor, just want to let you know that,
Correct.
you know, our task force came together, this is a list of the things, because they would send them to him,
Yeah.
all the different departments, to say, hey, these are citations that I happen to notice, or these are the amount of runs that we've had in the last, 90 days, those kind of things.
And, we do have that disorderly house ordinance, I think you did, correct? Which is, it's, in my opinion, all this does is add beef to it, add muscle to it. And it takes that and kind of builds upon it in an enforceable way where not just these properties are getting seen, but all properties that have issues are gonna be seen. And there's a clear structure of how we're gonna abate these problems for every property, for building department stuff, health department stuff, criminal behavior and stuff like that, so.
So when I send this over to you guys, instead of utilizing the police department and health department at the top of this, maybe we change that to something, community task force, whatever we figure out.
The nuisance property task force.
I don't particularly have any issue with asking the police department to do it if they'll do it.
Yeah.
Somehow the police get more attention than a property maintenance inspector or a health inspector.
Yeah,
does.
I mean, they're getting the bulk of these runs,
Right.
these properties.
But
But a letter from the chief,
we do
Yeah.
have
Listen
to
to
get the
more than-
letters out.
Yeah. But I think
That's
the
up to
officers
the chief.
themselves are kind of burnt out on responding to some of these properties, because it's like, dude, we're coming to this place again, what can we do? This gives them something to do, this is gonna give them incentive, they show up, okay, mark you down, we're telling you, it's not beneficial for you for us to keep coming out here, because this is what's gonna happen.
right, it's just,
Yeah.
my goal, and I get the idea, and I like, the difference is disorderly house, you send a letter out, if they don't comply, then you have to cite them to court, which can be hard to cite somebody, to actually get them served with a criminal complaint. With this, we can do, certified is probably better, but by
That's-
mail, we don't have to.
That's what I've got
Yeah,
marked on here. I
yeah.
changed it to certified mail version.
I was gonna say, I did
But-
like that
But the
change as
concern,
well.
but the question is, I want to make sure that we want to make sure that the structure is going to work for what it is you want to accomplish, and that it is valid in the way it does it. And so that includes the appeal, who hears the appeal, who issues the citations, who tracks this.
And we'll get to
who,
we'll get
and
to
it's
that as
like-
we go
and there's-
through.
Yeah, and there's a few things farther on that are about,
Yeah.
like, well, this many in this many days, or do they just submit a plan, and if they do that, is everything swell? And how do you submit a plan for, I'll cut the grass next week, So there's a number of those.
Well,
kinds of
that's
things,
the
too.
biggest thing is, living where I'm living now, it's now my third year there. The house across the street, when I moved in, there was a green tag on the front door, and I went over and looked, and that green tag was issued 8 months before I moved in. And then they came out and green tagged it again, and grass was probably about my throat, chin area. They tagged it again. We waited after 4 calls from 4 different residents around there, not me, but other residents and other neighbors. It was still another 5 months before they came up and green tagged it again. And, to me, I'm kind of like, okay, this is out of control. How, and we still didn't have Public Works there for at least a year after I had moved in to actually cut the grass one time. So, I don't know, honestly, how busy the health department or Dale is, but I know that when that green letter goes up and it says you have 10 days to do something about this, and it's 6 months later.
Yeah, it's a lack of follow through.
I mean,
Yeah, the thing is, that when it comes to grass, I could keep Dale busy, like,
Yeah.
once a month with 5 or 6 different, on just the block
and,
around me.
and I think,
That's one block.
I think this
in the
task
city.
force idea that Mr. Gabbard has would help those departments immensely in taking care of some of this, instead of them individually going out and doing it themselves. We've got a team effort and a team working together as a team to accomplish one goal, and that's to clean up these properties.
I just say the police, the fire inspectors, the health Dale, and the guys in the building department, they are motivated. I mean,
Right.
I don't ever think that, they're just
Oh,
not.
yeah.
They
No, I
are-
don't think that at all.
I
They're
doubt that.
absolutely
I spoke
motivated
with,
to do that, and I think that they obviously would appreciate a little more leverage against some of
Yeah.
the people they have to deal with. But yeah, the idea that they're not doing anything, they certainly are. And
Right, and I don't.
I don't-
doubt that.
I don't-
I'm just
yeah.
saying that maybe this task force that Mr. Gabbard is discussing or trying to get rolling can help with that process, along with this, to help give more teeth and help the city.
And before we move on, he's had a couple hand
There is
raises.
differentiation in the number of units. I got
Yes,
20 units
Yeah.
building.
we're getting to that. We're getting to
It
that.
is.
You know, can I give a real life example and see what your ordinance would say to this? I mean, I told you coming in before, I really knew nothing about this other than I seen it in the email I got. You know, I have those kids when school's in, and it was becoming a bigger and bigger problem. They would, 10 or 20 of them, and I've been there myself numerous times, right after school, we could set our watch, and we'd end up calling the police almost every time. And of course, the kids are nasty as hell to the police, as well as everyone else. And I realize there's not a whole lot that police could do, I don't know, but it seems like you're trying to hold me responsible. I'm there trying to do something.
Well, and we'll get to that because, again, from my experience where I used to work, I had the exact same issue.
Well, what I think you'll find is we're trying to give landlords teeth as well and say, hey,
Correct.
you got these people chronically hanging out at your property, and they're causing all these problems.
They don't
Hit the road.
Well, and from what I've
specific.
discussed with other cities when I made my calls or did my research is they've seen that property owners have the teeth of doing an emergency eviction based on something like this.
What's an emergency eviction?
72
It's
hours.
Is there some emergency eviction I don't know about?
There is a 72-hour emergency eviction that you can
It's
apply
different from
for.
many other evictions, so.
I don't know anything about that.
Oh
I've
yeah,
been doing it for 30 years.
I
I'd love to know about it.
'Cause-
Because I got this one, she actually moved out.
a friend of mine, his dad used to own property over in Avondale, and he used to do it all the time. Based on the number of police runs, he would go and get the police runs for that unit, and he'd go and file an emergency eviction for 3 days, and then all of a sudden I'd get a call and say, hey, you gotta be at this property in 3 days to set out.
Well, now you can.
Okay,
I think they're
Yeah,
all
it's court
3-day.
date.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're all
but-
3-day evictions.
Part-
You can get
Part
a
of-
3-day eviction in 45 days, excuse me, or whenever your court date is.
Right.
But you can't say 72 hours from now. You know.
I
that's
get
what-
where you're coming from, but this allows, because then you still have to wait that time past that 45 days of,
It's
that's,
10 days or 3 days. I mean, you
Right.
can get an emergency
Right.
for 3 days or 10 days.
right,
But
but
it can take 45.
this'll help you out in your process.
Yeah, because part of it too is say you get sent a couple letters or hey, you get a fine because the tenant's just being
I'm not gonna
out
be
there.
fine. We're gonna be in big time court in Providence, guys.
Yeah.
Well,
Well-
if you get a letter saying you're fined, you can always say, you can, in this, you send a letter to the safety service director, the task force, and say, this is what I'm doing to abate this problem. And that process gets delayed, okay?
But I understand where you're coming from, because I remember one house, and this is many years ago, and there were constantly, older teenagers there all the time causing all kinds of problems. And they were there because of the 16-year-old girl that lived there.
If I can
And
figure
the
out-
landlord has no, that's, so I get it, what's the plan? And the question is, then what's the plan?
Well,
I
if can
can't,
figure out
you
what's
couldn't
wrong.
go into court and say, I'm gonna evict these, I need to evict these people because there's too many high school boys that like the daughter, I mean, I get where you're coming from, and
Then I gotta
that's,
give them 30 days
Right.
notice. Then I file 3 days after that. Then my court date is 45 days. And if I got police reports saying something, usually as long as I can get a city, and the police department's cooperative.
That's the ammunition we want to give you.
That's what we're trying to give you within this.
Yeah.
That's already
And
there.
that's,
What would help is if they'd actually arrest people. These punky ass kids, many, many times we called about it, we know their faces and stuff. It's a different police officer every time, and I know. But if they would really just, they would leave.
well, I mean,
They would go.
if they arrest them and they take them down to jail, they're gonna be out on OR bond anyway,
yeah,
so.
you need another
But you
person.
want me to be responsible for it.
what we're doing is we're trying to have the landlords bring in somebody that's not going to bring in people like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
instead of filling a
In your
unit.
case, I don't
let's-
think we would be holding you responsible. We would be then trying to look at, hey, maybe we need to step up police patrols, and,
Correct.
you know,
Yeah.
that, then they would look at that, because you're being very cooperative. We're
And
not gonna
that's-
be fining you and things
that's
like
where-
that. We're
that's
gonna
where-
be trying to figure out the solution on it. All this is not about necessarily how do we get to a point where we can find somebody. We just want the problem resolved, and that's what we wanna
does the
do.
law exactly say? In 10 years, when I've been here for, this is the only gentleman I recognize, and you had a whole different seat when I first came here.
I had, yes.
In 10 years, when all you guys are gone and you've written this law, and the other folks are trying to figure out exactly what the intention is,
And-
they're gonna look at the written word.
And we're going to
which
get
says-
we're going to get into that, and that's why it's 9 pages long, because I didn't want to have a 2-page long ordinance that was extremely vague, opened the loopholes, and something that nobody within the city or departments could look at and go, I don't know if this fits or not. I really don't. That's
Yeah,
one
and-
thing that
and
I've seen.
Given your situation.
Not saying you guys aren't doing a fantastic job, but I've noticed some of our ordinances are like half a page.
And like
That's-
given your situation, like Mr. Gabbard stated, is it sounds like it's not somebody coming there to hang out with a tenant. It just seems like maybe you got an attractive part of the property that they're like, hey, this is our hangout spot, our clubhouse, or whatever they call it, and that's not. You can't do nothing. You can't evict anybody because of that. You can't.
And that's where discretion comes in, and that's where the task force comes in, and that's what I was trying to explain earlier was as a police officer, police officers have discretion to cite somebody for 27 or 2 miles over the speed limit, or not cite them for 2 miles over the speed limit. There's that discretion that we have, and if a police officer didn't have discretion and said, this law says that we have to cite you for 27 or for 2 miles over the speed limit, everybody would be getting cited. We're not looking to come into this and go, okay, everybody that falls under this is getting cited.
I
If,
thought you were.
What?
Everybody that falls under this is going to get cited. That's what I thought you were saying.
Yeah, for but this isn't somebody on his property that lives there. It's people coming and hanging out there.
So I'm getting calls for people fighting.
Yeah.
And sometimes I evict them if it's a big enough problem, but I'm not gonna.
And
I
if-
can't go to court on one issue where the police were called.
if you, if
No,
you
this
end up
gives you
getting a
3.
letter-
You don't get a fine till the 3rd issue.
Yeah.
So that's multiple
Well,
issues.
it's
if
you know?
more
you
than that,
end up
'cause
getting a
it's-
letter,
Yeah, I
okay.
mean, this isn't like, hey, you're getting a $500 fine the first time you get called.
if you get a
No.
letter and you send the safety service director or the task force member, whoever's heading this up, a letter back within 10 days saying, hey, look, I filed eviction, here's my file date, here's my court date. That to us says that you're looking to abate that situation.
Understood.
Okay?
So one call.
Now that gets
The
put
current draft
Yeah.
It's not-
says, the current draft, if you got 4 or more units in a building, you don't get the first letter until after 7 incidents.
Correct. And that's where
So it's
that's
kind
where
of-
we'll get
it's-
into.
Yeah, we're getting into that part.
Pretty many.
We'll get into that part because I split it up into under section 2. I've split it up into 2 or 3 residential units or 4 plus units.
Yeah.
And that'll your 4 plus
Yeah,
units
so
looks at 7 nuisance
2 or
activities.
3 unit is 4 nuisance activities. The 4 or more, the larger ones like yours is 7.
The problem is that's over a year, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
and
so a
it could be
12-month
different
period.
people. Now, again,
No, yeah.
I really don't want to be the person here just bitching and moaning because I don't want to do nothing. If I have a person who gets called 2 or 3 times, I'm going to be starting to evict them. 30-day notice.
And
I have
again,
a right to
that's
cure
that's
by
where
law.
that's where as long as you're in notification with the task force head or whoever we're doing, saying, look, I've started this process. Now that pushes back, that delays any.
Was it only process eviction, or I'm trying to work this out, or I'm aware of it, or?
If you're trying to work it out with the resident instead of doing an eviction, let them know. Hey,
Yeah.
look, we're talking with this resident, we're talking with this occupant, we're trying to resolve the issue. If we can't resolve it, I'll let you know.
Yeah,
We're just trying to get
creating
more
that
communication
creating
with
that
it.
process is going to allow them to say, hey, this landlord, this owner here he understands. He doesn't want these problems either, and he's trying to handle them. So that process has started. So we're not going to sit there and keep dinging that property on this.
Okay, just when you say we, I just want to make
city.
it clear.
The city.
You guys will not have the first thing to do with it.
No,
Correct.
Just,
the
as a-
city.
as- I just, that's.
The city of
that's- I just
Norwood.
Want to
In
make
10
that clear.
years, it'll be, what does it say?
Yes,
so
but if we say, oh well, they got new people coming in all the time, then what accountability process do we have? We're going to have landlords that don't care and don't get back to us with an abatement plan, that don't kick people out, that are going to get fined heavily. And
Does
if we
say
make
there
it,
If you get an abatement plan, you're free and clear?
It doesn't say free and clear.
there's no free and
We'll get
clear.
into that. We'll
There
get
is-
into that. We'll get into that.
If we make it free and clear, then
And it needs to be written differently, but that's kind of what it says.
if we're going to make anything free and clear, then we might as well end the meeting and go, because that's not going to solve anything.
Right.
Because if you're an attentive landlord and you keep coming in saying, hey, I'm working on getting this person out, they had this call, that call, that's what we want.
We want communication between landlords and the city. We don't want a landlord that's just going to go.
And let me also just say, this is not just about landlords.
No,
Correct.
it's not
This is
even
a-
about
this is
landlords.
Single families.
I mean, to me, it's like
This
10% about
encompasses
landlords.
everything, and we'll get into that with
Yeah.
section 2 if we can start it.
It's the worst house near me is.
There's a provision in the Middletown
30-year,
ordinance
40-year
that
Norwood
refers to
Yeah,
what's
that-
called
that happens,
affirmative defenses. And one of the affirmative defenses is he or she, that is the owner, has knowledge of the nuisance activity but has promptly and vigorously taken all actions necessary to abate each nuisance, including without limitation compliance with the requirements of Ohio Revised Code 5321, which I think may be the eviction process. Not totally sure, but the point is, it contemplates that if owners are being cooperative and something's going on that they can't directly control, that's in effect an affirmative defense to this, to a finding of a nuisance.
They're moving forward.
They're not just moving forward, but promptly and vigorously taking all actions necessary. One of the other defenses is they didn't have any knowledge and couldn't have had any knowledge. One of the other defenses is he wasn't the owner at the time. Another one, and this is interesting, if the owner performed a background check prior to leasing and is in the process of eviction, is a defense. The point is that these ordinances can protect people that are actually trying to correct the problem.
Exactly.
It'll all be in how you guys do it. Because
Yeah.
I've been through the city of Cincinnati one, and their whole point was to fine. They didn't do anything on the number of units, so it was X amount of calls. So, I get 4 calls a month of people with loud music in a 100-unit building with one address number, and they were fussing with me all the time. Now, I always did whatever they said.
Yeah.
And I had all these plans and abates, and I sold the building because it was a pain in the butt.
That's really
Paid
odd.
any fines,
That's how
but
it goes along.
follow the law and the rules, but
Yeah. And I don't know you personally, but it seems like the fact that you showed up here says enough that you're trying and you want to be involved and know what's going on. So
Right.
we would, the problem that happened with you in Cincinnati there, I feel like is kind of like Cincinnati's loss, and who knows what quality landlord bought that building. But here in Norwood, we want it to kind of be to where if you're working with us, we want to work with you. And if you're not willing to work with us, then sell to somebody that's going to. And I think that,
good on all that.
5321 is
Yeah.
landlord tenant.
You guys don't know me, but you probably know my manager and people there that work there. So.
yeah.
That's interesting because Cincinnati's, at least the code today, has provisions for so many, the same kind. It's 200 residential units, it's 30 activities in a year that triggers it. But we have this, it's in the same as in your draft. It says, it starts with the 2 or more within 30 days. And that does not specify what kind of property.
Right, and that's one thing that I've changed, and I forgot to. I didn't realize that you were going to be here, so I apologize. Mr. Gabbard, if you want, we can move on to number 2. I don't know if you have anything else.
No.
On section 1.
Yeah.
No,
Thank you for entertaining.
no, you're good.
Oh, thanks for the questions.
I appreciate you being
I
here.
appreciate you
So-
saying we're entertaining.
Under section 2, we've got notification that premise may be a chronic nuisance. And it essentially says the safety service director or his or her designee, their designee. I don't know why I put his I think it's just because of who's in there now. But their designee shall notify the premise owner in writing that the premise is in danger of becoming a chronic nuisance. Now, if we're looking at a task force versus the safety service director, or we start with the safety service director and then move to the task force, we can do that. But then we've got the subsections, one that says, when 2 or more nuisance activities have occurred at a single family premise. Okay. So I added in a single family premise, where each activity occurs on a separate day during a 30-day period. So to me, the single family premise is that, you've got one family living there, and 2 or more nuisance occurrences happen. So if you've got a single family and the police department responds for 3 fights in a month there, this kind of pertains to what I was explaining earlier, where we were going to this place every single day, 2 or 3 times a day, to where, either the owner or occupier, whether it be rental or whether it be owner occupied, they will get that notice on this one. And that's where the 30-day period comes in, is for the single-family residential homes. Is there anybody have anything on that one?
Well, the one thing, 'cause then it goes to, okay, so it's a single family, you got 2 events in 30 days, triggers the initial letter. For a 2 family, you need 4 activities over 12 months. And that just seems to be a dramatically different standard.
And some of the ordinances I was looking at really had the 2-year version, and I dropped it down to a year. Are we wanting to drop this just down to 30 days for everything?
I don't even know if I like the 30 days thing, because if there's one instance there and then there's another instance 31 days from then, it doesn't make it any less of a nuisance than it does if it's in 30 days.
Do you want to go to single family a year?
I think that 2 in a single family in 30 days, because you got to put a number on there. You can't just say, just whatever.
We call it a year, we call it 30 days, we call it whatever we want.
I like the 30 days. If you've, because
that's going to get the severe issues, and that will kind of
But from a multifamily,
hit those.
I would. Why could we not just designate it to the unit? So if you've got 2 and 30 days at a particular unit, because it's not necessarily just that property. I mean, whoever lives there, you got problems, whether it's in their parking lot or not. When the officer says, "Where do you live?" and they say, "I live in apartment B."
Well, this states in here 2 or 3 residential units. So, that could be. We could classify that as just, it doesn't have to be like if you have a fight in apartment 1, a fight in apartment 3, we don't need to technically classify that as 2 runs to that building.
I think Mr. Gary was going to add something in.
The incident reports that the police generally produce, or that get produced, through the police communications with dispatch and their own work afterwards, sometimes don't distinguish between which is Unit 1 and Unit 2. And so I'd urge you to consider that reality.
Yeah, that's something that I thought about at least.
And sometimes, for example, if something's going on in the street outside, on the street, let's say, and maybe 2 doors away, it relates to that house, but it's not at that house, and you don't find it if you search for, the house number.
Right.
And so, I don't know. It's just...
Some of those are tough, yeah.
And you can't necessarily expect the police to come up with a unit number, for example. I think that the notice that a premises that's got 2 or 3 units, you can use it on that basis. Or the premises that's got 4 units, do it that way or something, but not by unit.
Yeah, okay.
I like it. I like that.
But
and you're going to get inconsistent reporting. You're going to get inconsistent reporting depending on who's doing the reporting,
right?
Whether the dispatch people put the unit in or not, that kind of stuff. It's just hard to do it precisely. And they're generally responding to an emergency call or in any event, a call for service, et cetera.
Okay.
That all makes perfect sense. The thing I find odd is that if you've got a single-family house and you have a big giant party or a drug overdose or any felony drug conviction counts, just one, or a fight at a single-family home, and if you don't have another one until the 31st day, it's off the radar. But a two-family, it's measured in 12 months. And so I don't know why it would be, I think there should be
30
something
days,
in
yeah.
between that would.
It would just be like 5.
Well, I agree
30
with you.
days.
It's kind of, and that's what you responded initially in the email, was like, you asked him about that, or it was that Kramer. But it was, and Matt explained to me, and I would like him to try to explain to us, but I do like the idea of maybe taking the 30 days out and saying in a year. You have,
I've got to excuse
Two and-
myself. My daughter's graduating from college virtually today.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
well, thank you for coming,
Congratulations.
Mr. Gary. You've been very informative for us,
And
as
congratulations
always.
to your daughter.
Yeah, very much congratulations.
That's more important.
Yeah.
Than
Congratulations
this.
to us because we're not paying tuition.
Right?
Hey, you'll never stop paying for them.
I don't ever doubt that.
Man.
So,
Well, my thought is this.
I
Matt,
don't like the year thing, man. You're giving way too much leeway. I still like
Well,
the 30
like-
days,
like-
and if it's a multi
Well,
thing,
like
if
Mr.
you've
Moore
got
said, say
4 in
something
a 30
happens at my
days,
house, and then that 31st day, something else happens again, it's off the radar, now it's back on that once and 30-day period, and it's tracking
or
30
what if you
days at a
say
time.
if there's 2 in 30 days, or there's 6 in 12 months,
That kind, yeah, I mean, that would make
Six-
sense.
or
Six
90 days, or
6
something.
instances in 12 months, we're sending a letter, that's not acceptable to me.
Well,
That's
whatever, but
poor.
to have, I think there's something that,
That's
if they're
soft.
if they're out there every if they're coming there every 2 weeks for something, then to a single family house, well, there might be a problem. We might want to
Yeah.
send them a letter. Hey, somebody should do something about it. For a larger building, it would be a higher number, I think. But that,
It could be your number, whatever number you want, but then it could be if it's 2 or more for the same apartment or person.
Well, like he said, it's
We
hard
can't
to
break it
figure
down
out
to
which-
just
that's
you.
kind of hard
Yeah.
to track
Or-
out.
But
Yeah.
usually if there's a specific person, the police will know and will write that down.
right.
If they know they're going
Well,
to
and,
do something every
let's
time.
let's just say that somebody is outside the apartment in the common area, and they meet the police and they go, oh yeah, I live in unit 3, and yet they
Yeah.
live in unit 2.
Right.
Now I've run into that problem several times where they may not even live there, and they go, oh yeah, I'm in apartment 4, and then we
Well,
find out they live on Lawndale.
The way I envisioned this was, you get two calls in that 12-month time. Then you get a letter, the first letter saying, hey, we want to see how you're going to abate the problem. The second one, hey, you're in danger of becoming a nuisance property. Here's the fine schedule for single property homes. And then after that third call, then you start getting fined. That's what I
I like the
envisioned.
2 in 30 days, and if it's
Well, then what happens after that 30 days? They get a letter. Then after
Or-
that 30 days for that 12-month
stand
period.
by, or 6 in 6 months. If you have, if you've got that way, if there's an incident because it's happening a lot in a short amount of time, or somebody hits that 31 day and then 31 day, but still within that 90 days or 6 months, you're showing a pattern here. That's where we can do it. Instead of waiting a whole year, I think waiting a whole year is, that's really soft.
Well, then what do we do? So in 30 days, they get the 2 calls in 30 days, we send a letter. That 30 days is over. Does that start? When do they start getting
We're
fined?
not saying
That's a whole nother issue in this, is because there is nothing here about when things start over, how
Yeah.
long here's my plan to abate wears off, or it didn't work, or that's not spelled out very well in here. But I think, yeah, I'm thinking about Xavier House, I'm thinking about
Yeah.
grass. It's like, oh yeah, they get cited in March, or April, when it's raining like crazy, and then it stops raining for a month, but then it happens every 2 months. They have to
Yeah.
get cited. Or there's a party house. They have it finals week, and then they have it the first day of school, and then they have it that first weekend. And
St.
there's
Patty's
3
Day.
big parties, 4
Yeah.
big parties over the course of a year down at Spencer or Regent and Hudson and
Yeah.
Quincy.
And I'll tell you, if I'm calling in, I got a neighbor, if I have a neighbor who's a nuisance, right, and I'm calling in and they're getting, in 6 months' time, the police come out 6 times, which is essentially maybe once a month, and nothing's happening, I'm gonna be pretty pissed off.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna feel like nothing's happening. I'm
Right.
gonna be worn out on calling.
That's why I don't like a year. That's why I'm saying
Well, I
either
mean-
in 30 days or 6 months. If you get 2 in 30 days or you get, 6 in 6 months, then we've got a
What
problem.
I'm saying is, in that year's time, on single properties, and we got it here for, the apartment buildings and that. So like single properties, you get 2 letters. The first time it comes out, you get the 2 letters. The first time that you get a call, you get a letter. Second time you get another letter. Third time you start getting fined. That's the way I kind of understood what we were doing.
Yeah, I had to like kind of outline the process because it was like who does what when.
I was essentially doing the same thing.
SSD
while I
the
was
first
doing this.
thing, and then shall determine, well, if there's an additional within 14 days, or more than 14 days after, then shall determine, calculate the cost, and then send a bill. The second one's a bill.
Yeah, second one is a bill. Yeah, the first letter that goes out should have, hey, you're in danger of becoming a chronic nuisance, here's the fine schedule. If the second letter has to go out because an abatement letter hasn't been sent, or somebody hasn't come to the task force or safety service director, whoever it is, and said, hey, this is what I'm doing to abate it, get it on paper, then that second letter goes out that first letter, from that first letter, they've already got the fine schedule, so that second letter goes out with the fine.
I like
That's
that.
not
You
the,
and I
but no,
discussed.
what goes out on the, if there's an incident within 14 days, or more than 14 days after the notice,
Mhm.
and there's another incident, they are sent a bill, but the bill is for the cost of responding.
Correct,
So it's not the fine schedule.
correct.
It's the cost of responding. Now, what is and I forget what it is for the citation, 3 or more in a year, and then you can be cited $500 for the second one, although that needs to be clarified. that
Yeah,
language,
so
but-
what are we saying? Are we saying if you get 2 and within 30 days in single family or single property, that triggers a letter?
A letter.
That
Or
you're in danger
then-
of being a
yeah,
chronic
And
nuisance.
then we got on the other hand is, on the third time in a 12-month period, you get a fine. So.
I see what you're saying.
Where the 12-month and the 30-day thing adds up. That's why I think,
I see what you're saying. All right, I was saying the initial violation. You are now going to get your letter saying you could be potential nuisance property
Yeah.
if it happens twice in 30 days or 6 in 6 months. Okay, so whichever. So even if it's multifamily, you've gotten 6 in 6 months, or even a single family, you got 6 in 6 months. At that 6 month mark, once you hit that 6, you get a letter saying, hey, you get a citation, there's going to be a problem here.
I think that's too soft. I mean, giving them 6 things, I mean, it's 6 months. I think that's soft.
Well, if they do it 2 and 2 in them within 30 days, then, but if you're getting somebody, it's just, they're not doing it like really quick, but
Yeah.
they're showing a pattern of a problem, then you would get a letter saying, hey, you're going to be a nuisance, and then,
Yeah. I mean,
then-
I just think it's a half measure. I just don't think it's.
But what we have in there now is you got to have, if you're a 2-family, you got to wait 12 months. Or if there's got to be, if there's 4, you have to have 4 activities at some point within
Yeah.
a 12-month period. You
That's
don't have
why,
to wait
that's
till
why
the
I'm
end
in
of the
favor
12.
of
If they hit
dropping
the
the 30
4, you can
days
send
and
them a
going to a
letter.
year for
You know,
everything.
We're just, what we're not looking at the entire year of saying, okay, we're gonna have a year of this stuff, and then we'll start sending letters out.
No.
Right.
That,
Once they hit
this is
4,
just where,
once they hit
once a year
7, once
hits,
they hit whatever
it
that
kind
number
of rolls over and it starts over. That's where we're coming from with this. That's where this is supposed to say, okay, after a year.
Or is that year kind of a floating scale of, hey, 1 year since your last call? Like, so say 14 months goes by and they had one.
Then that wouldn't, they end up starting over.
That needs to be spelled out.
Yeah, I think. Because that's kind of, like, say you get one in January and that starts, hey, you're on our radar. And then next year in November you get another one, or you get like your 5th or 6th one.
Well, that's why I'm saying, if we have,
Does
if we have a
January, when it
list,
came on our notice after this ordinance, is that when it drops off? So that thing in November doesn't count no more? Or is it a rolling scale?
So you're saying if they get one in January and they have the same incident in November,
Yeah, but throughout the year too, they have enough to get fined. And it just comes January, because after our ordinance passed, that's when they first came on our radar, then it ends there and they got a clean slate.
yeah,
Okay.
because I'm not trying to hang people up for 5 years on this thing.
Right.
3 years, saying, oh, well, 5 years ago you had this issue, now you've got the same issue 5 years from now.
Like, hey, you
We're
came
gonna send
out,
you a letter
you
and
got a
be
letter,
nuisance.
so now you're now that's the standing date. You got a year, you mess
Correct.
up a year in here, and
Correct.
this many times you're getting a letter, this many times.
And I can't imagine that we're going to have 500 properties around
No.
the city that are going to be on the radar for a year. I can't. I mean, I can imagine maybe 20 properties that we can sit there on a board or on a spreadsheet that go, okay,
Well, hopefully the purpose of this is to weed those landlords out and get
Correct.
landlords
Get
Yeah.
landlords
like Mike
you.
here, and that are, responsible for
Yeah.
their properties and hold that, and people start realizing, dude, I am tired of messing with this. I
Yeah.
just sell
Because,
this property.
I mean,
That's cool.
you can do background checks, you can look into people's past and stuff, but you never know. They might on paper look like, man, this is a great tenant.
Well,
blah, blah,
that you're
and then
only
turn into
getting-
a turd or something. And then we got a landlord that is responsive and coming and doing this, and he's in a process. That sets the tone to me for other landlords to say, hey, all right, I did my due diligence on this tenant, and I thought it was great, and they turned out to be bad, and this stuff's happening, so we're getting them out of here. You can do everything you can to try to get good people in, and some might slip through the cracks, and you might rent to somebody that's a bad tenant. But what we want to try to do is get the best people we can come to Norwood to rent, because the word will spread, hey, don't do that. That's not gonna work there.
Yeah.
We're just gonna be out. And landlords or property owners that want to buy in Norwood, hey, I want to buy in Norwood because they're not allowing this stuff. Or potential renters that, hey, we don't want to buy in Norwood because we're not gonna go through all that work to make sure we get quality people in. That's kind of the weed out process
Yeah.
we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, the intention makes sense. It's like we want to get the attention of the property owners that don't care.
And-
Yeah.
Let them know, hey,
And
listen,
even
you've
like you
got-
said, like
you have an
like,
incentive to care now, so try.
yeah, like even like you said, like there might be some longtime property owners. Like if I own my house 20 years and I turn into a bad, property owner, it affects them as well. This ain't just renters and that kind of thing. It's property owners. And that brings me to one question to go backward. I'm sorry. With bank-owned properties that are like leaving the grass to grow, abandoned and all that, can we still do this, like fining them and putting liens on those properties?
We can always try. We can always send them a bill and put a lien on it and see it. Part of it is like where it is in the process. Is there an estate going on? Some banks are responsive, some
Yeah.
are not. But doing it will, it's more likely to get people's attention, at least if they're relatively local banks.
Yeah.
If they're, just got stuck with it, because they don't want it either. We're not even going to foreclose because we don't want to own a thing either.
Yeah, I mean, we
that's
can
a different
auction
thing.
it, maybe a little bit, but yeah, I mean, it's just because that is a kind of a problem as well too in Norwood, where they could be these bank-owned properties that kind of sit and just are
There's
unkept.
that, and there's estates, and there's, people that just run out of money, and there
Yeah.
are situations where there's really not anything we can do and nobody we can get a hold of. But then there's some that it's like, well, we'll add the lien anyway, and if and when something happens,
Yeah,
we'll get some money back. So, here's what I would ask is if you could forget the language of the ordinance, but just do like a flow chart on if once a single family has this much in this letter goes out, and then if this happens, that happens, and if the next thing happens, then this happens. And that it's easier if we know what we want that to be.
Yeah.
Then we make the language go around
Like a
it.
little
Instead
cheat
of
sheet.
this has been kind of a deconstruction, which is not always the most accurate and easy thing to do. To start with, okay, I'm going to figure out the process from what they wrote. What the statutory language, the ordinance language is, which is may not be totally accurate. So, if you guys if you could it should be pretty quick. Just like I went, when this happens, then this. If this happens, then this.
That's what, we can go
Yeah.
through that now, and
Mhm.
I'll write it down now,
Yeah.
and I can always make the adjustments. If we're looking at this is gonna go under section 2, and we say, okay, a single family, we'll start with that one since it's the first one,
Yeah.
has 2 or more nuisance activities within 30 days.
What happens?
And then,
So-
and so that's within, whatever it is, the initial notice that you might be a nuisance.
Yeah, so in 2 and 30 days, you're getting that letter says, hey, you're in danger of being a nuisance property. This is our fine schedule for if we have to come out again.
Or shouldn't we say, if you get 2, but you know, again, like we talked before, somebody hits that 32 day,
Yeah, because
and now, so but that doesn't, you're still in the parameters if you get, 4 and 90 days.
yeah.
What I'm saying, because as soon as you get those
Right.
2,
I see
I'm
where
just
you're coming
unwilling to
from.
wait
Yeah.
that 90 days.
but what I'm
wait
saying
for
is that
fourth
90,
time.
no, once you got that second one, at the 32nd day, you're still within. So, I mean,
If
I think
anything,
that
I would change it to 2 and 90 days, not 4 and 90 days. I mean, I haven't had the police called my house once in like 4 years
Yeah.
of living there. I mean,
thank you for
Thank you,
coming.
gentlemen.
yeah, thank
Thank
you
you
for
for
coming out.
working on this. Thank you for
Yeah.
entertaining my comments. It's much appreciated, your service.
Yeah.
We have your card and our emails are public access, so please reach out if you have any
If you would like,
questions.
email me what you got. I'm not sure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, you got a hard battle. But think about, on my side, it's just, it's hard for me to control other people.
Right.
When I got 30 of them,
We get that. We want to make it easier for you to manage rather than control them. So, hey, you can do the buffoonery, but you can't do it here. Kind of deal.
and we do that. It's just, I'm scared of some of the time frames and legalities, and when you go to court, and there's just things that take, but you know what?
And you can't evict anybody now anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
Court's
they're back
closed.
running now. They're back running in Claremont
Oh, that's,
County at least.
in Claremont, are they? Okay.
And, yeah, well, that's scary enough. That's scary too. Don't that all in, and we don't have to wear masks. But thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm gonna let you guys work on
All
those
right.
details, because my head's starting to hurt on that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
a flow chart would help.
Cheat sheet. I like
And it
it.
would help for whoever's got to actually do it.
Yeah.
You know.
So,
What
we're
about 2
looking
and
at-
30 or 3 and 60? That way, if somebody can't just,
well, I just don't like waiting for that third
Because
hit to start fining.
And
'cause that's,
I get where you guys are coming from. It's not, I didn't put it in extremely clear as to when
well,
it
that
rolls
third
over.
one, as soon as that second one would hit, really, you can send a letter
I mean,
out.
if somebody's getting 2 or more in a single family within 30 days, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
yeah.
But let's say they they have a fighting run there, and the police go there 32 days after that first one, and it's the same people fighting. Now they've rolled over to that new 30-day
I mean,
period.
what about something like 2 and 30, 3 and 90, 4 and...
3 and 60.
What I'm saying, like having a
4
really...
90.
Well, to just for right now, that's something you guys can come back to. And
Yeah.
there's other members that are going to want to weigh in on this once you get to that kind of language. I mean,
Well,
the
thing
specifics
is,
of that, so-
outside of here, we can't really work together on it as far
Well,
as.
what I was
I
gonna
just
also,
feel like that 2 and 30, 3 and 60 or whatever it is just a little bit. It can be confusing for whoever's going to be doing these. I feel like if we say, hey, you got dinged, okay, now you're on our radar. Within that next 12 months, you get dinged again. This is what happens. Third time, this is what you get. Fourth time, this is what you get.
See, because what I'm envisioning is an Excel spreadsheet with the date, with 2020. We'll just use it to this year. 2020. Across the top, you've got January, February, March, April, May, June, July, all the months, right? Down the other side, you've got the list of address and, I don't know, somewhere else in there. I haven't really looked at a spreadsheet. But you've got, January, and then whatever date it is under the January, and what the instance was.
Yeah.
So if we're putting instances into that month, now you're looking at it and saying, okay, it's still January, we've had 2 instances, the letter's going out.
The first letter.
Right.
So they got to mess up twice.
But then once we get to
28.
February, now we're starting it all over again.
Or a felony drug offense, it's just once.
So with that, we're gonna have to even fine them and even make this effective, they're gonna have to do something more than twice in 30 days.
Yes.
There's
For
that
this,
fine.
for this to apply,
For
but
this
if
to
they
apply,
violate
yes.
any of those ordinances and codes, they're subject to the already existing penalties
So
that
I
apply, for
think
whatever
if
those
we-
are. They may be orders from the building department, they may, or health department, they may be, somebody's been arrested, they may be, they're coming to court, it may be, so there's already, all of these things already involve
They could have 2 or 3
penalties.
violations based on the health department, based on the police department, based on building department. If we get all the heads together and we look at these addresses and go, okay, we've had 4 violations in the last month, the last 30 days at this one building,
Yeah.
they're gonna get that letter.
I still think that's a little soft, but I mean, I get it.
Well, I mean, if we want to change it to a 2 and 30 days, 4 and, or 3, is it 3 and 60?
3 and 60.
And 4 and 90?
That way you don't got, I mean, that next month, you don't just get a whole free month to get 2 more.
Right.
You,
Yeah.
just one, boom.
I like
you're-
2 and 60. You get 2. I mean, because we're all adults, and if you're kind of a even just average adult, I mean, 3 times you're getting warned. I don't even gotta warn my kids
I'm
3
good
times.
with 2 at 60.
I mean, I gotta repeat myself to my kids all the time, but 3 times. I mean,
Right.
that's just-
well, I mean, that's
and
what
those
I'm
are
saying.
kids.
That's what I'm
talking
saying.
about adults.
1 and 2, or 2 in 30 days. 3
Because
in
that's
60
really
days.
serious.
Yeah.
2 in 30 days, that's going to be pretty serious
Yeah.
stuff.
And then 3 in 60 days.
From where I'm coming
4
from,
and
2 and
90.
60 days is pretty serious.
Well,
Well, and let's just,
we don't even got to worry about the 4 and 90 because once they've hit that, they're starting to get, there's action being
Right,
moved on.
because they have 10 days. They only have 10 days.
And then
for
we got
this
the
to
issue here is, all right, so you got 2 into 30 days or 2 into 60 days, whatever we decide on. That time wears off, and then they get a couple more. Now, are we just in this process again, or is there an alternative process to say, hey, you've already been in this
I
nuisance
think what we
property.
need to spell out in
Now
here is
you
once
are
the
a
process
nuisance
has
property.
Once you're in the
started.
process, then it goes on a rolling 12 months.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what we need to spell out. And
I like that. That right there kind of alleviates the softness for me. 2 and 30 days.
And I hate to do this to you, Mr. Moore. I've got so much going on that I would love for you guys to try and add a little bit of this for me. Or
2
help
and-
me out with it.
2 and 30 days. You get warned twice. Then you're gonna start getting fined, and then after that 30 days, you got them 2 and 30 days. You get a letter. Now you are a nuisance property. So we're watching it for the next 12 months.
Yeah.
And anything more now, you're getting fined. I like that. I can live with that.
Can I recommend that, because we've already been at this an hour and a half,
Yeah.
and we still got a couple other things that we need to touch on. I would suggest that we report this out and then throw it in a committee of the whole. That way, everybody can talk about it in a non-formal way like this, and just, that way we get everybody's buy-in. But we also invite those, a representative from each of those departments, if not already talked to beforehand, to get their feed, that way they can candidly talk, just like, the law department has today. But to make sure that everybody's on board on this, and
It-
Uh-huh.
respectfully, I understand where you're coming from, and I've been on councils where that would be fine. This council, everybody has an opinion and something they want to say about it, and so I would suggest that this committee get closer
Yeah.
to final language
Okay.
Yeah.
before sending it to, because we've got 3 members of council here.
well, we'll have 4.
We had 3 here today, and we're over 90 minutes into this.
Yeah.
And so I'm just,
Well, that's a great point.
And
And
then-
that'll allow us to go back to the lab and come up with a flow chart to try to make it a little simpler.
Or just
maybe.
call another
Yeah.
call another meeting, and then we pick this back up
Yeah.
on some of those particulars.
That's fine.
and I can try to work on wrestling something together that is
I mean, I don't think
Like they
I
cover
didn't.
some
I didn't
things.
plan
No,
on
I-
getting through
I
this
can-
whole thing today.
having a better
It's
idea
9
of,
pages.
yeah, for me it was like having a better idea of what it is the goal was of how you guys want this or see this process working. That makes a big difference on other than I'm going through and like, does this mean this or does it mean that? And I don't know, maybe this should be something else, because that helps. So I can and probably go through and add some blanks just to say this
That'd be
needs
good.
to be filled in, you know,
Yeah, that'd be
this many
helpful.
days, or this much money, or this is when it runs out, or this person does, so that kind of thing, that should help.
Yeah, I'll report it out and then report it back in, I guess.
Or you can just do a committee report that says, we discussed it and went over lots of options.
We'll discuss
The
further.
committee will consider it further, yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping to have this out and ready at least
I think I think if we work on a
by the end
flow
of
chart,
June.
I think if we work on a flow chart together, it's kind of better define these things like he suggests. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, we come back with what he has.
Do we
Yeah.
want to try and set, like, because I don't want to sit on this for
Right.
6 months.
No, I would say next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Meet next week and see.
The
what
end
we
of-
can
yeah,
do.
like
'Cause if we
next
come back with a
Thursday or
flow chart
Friday.
and a better understanding, like a layman's terms, a cheat sheet rather. I think that'll be great for everybody to look at and say, okay, define, and then when these guys go to write or add their stuff, it'll be
Right.
easy to follow.
And if you can send, and if we can add that to send to the chiefs and the inspectors and
Yeah.
the administration to let, this is the
So,
process we're picturing, now tell us what we got
so
wrong.
if we want to work on this flow chart and try to get it out by what? Tuesday?
I think you should, if just one person could put together, you or any one of the three of you, I think could do here's a basic flow chart of the way the process rolls. This happens at this point. At this point, we can issue fines. At this point, we can bill them for the cost of service. Just any one person could do that. And it's just we all have one thing we're working on and can send it
And then
to me.
we're looking to have another meeting on this next week. Is that what you wanted?
Yeah.
Yeah, next Thursday or Friday or something like that. Just give everybody
Yeah.
a
So I
week.
got a Parks
Give
Committee
you a
on
week to put your
Wednesday.
flow chart together. Give him a week to kind of put some blank questions, and hopefully we can do something then. I totally agree with what you said, man.
I mean, if I go over and do
People.
if I go over and do the flow chart, I'll try to get it sent to him by the end of the weekend.
Okay.
That way, it helps him kind of fill in these blanks that he's. I mean, he just gave me a couple questions.
So
here.
do we want to try to call it next Thursday, same time? We can see
I can't do it next Thursday, same time.
Friday?
later.
I work all next week. Come back to work, so I'm
About next Friday.
probably looking like 7 at night.
Yeah.
Friday's no good for me.
Wednesday.
I'd much rather do it in the
Wednesday's my only
afternoon.
day off. Wednesday's my only day off.
So I have there's a Parks Committee meeting at 7:30 on Wednesday at the high school. We can do earlier that day.
I can do it earlier in the day because I don't have any exams next week. I took them all yesterday.
Wednesday?
So
Do Wednesday the 20th, 3:30.
we can do Wednesday the 30th at 3:30. We can do it earlier. We can.
Do that.
It doesn't matter to me. I mean, if
Oh, if we can do it earlier, what's the earliest you can do?
6
Today's the
a.m.
14th. No.
I can be here after 12
Okay.
on Wednesday.
So we want to 1.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd
1
be
o'clock.
I think for next week, I'm not sure. Because we have we're going to have another meeting on the employee handbook manual thing. I got an invite from Kelly Babcock for that, and it's like, this is my 1 hour of the week that I have a meeting for my full-time job. That's the one she picked, and I'm just like, of course.
We gonna do it here again?
Yeah, we can do it here.
So 1 p.m.
Wednesday the 20th, 1 o'clock. Got it.
And what I'll do is I'll send you this draft version that I changed today.
You got some, okay.
With the all I did was I bolded the changes that I made
Okay.
on Chief Kramer's stuff, or that he suggested, because he like you had some questions or some amendments that he wanted me to add in there. So I'll send that to you. What's bolded is what I changed. So when we go back through, we'll just.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we made a lot of progress on it. I mean, we got a good idea of a task force, flow chart to make it simpler. I mean,
And,
this
and
is-
that might be something that Mr. Gabbard kind of tries to get going on Friday, Monday, Tuesday, maybe talking with Mayor Snyder and or his assistant and seeing if we can kind of try and get that ball rolling with that task force. So we don't have to just start with the safety service director or the assistant to the mayor and then roll into the task force. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Hopefully we can get there
So-
better.
I don't know, have you heard back from the departments on that?
Like
I mean, it's just a
Chief
suggestion
Kramer
you
was
had.
like, yeah, we used to do that, and
Yeah, we did.
I think it's a good idea, and Cabe says it's a good idea. Everybody thinks it's a good
We
idea.
were
It's just
doing,
a matter.
we were doing that, and then
Yeah.
they were doing it before, and then it came back again when I first came in as law director, and we hit the wall because the 2 or 3 that were really the problems were the city needed to go in and really do some serious abatement of the properties, and we didn't have the money to do it. So
Yeah. What street was the one that he was initially talking about? It's like, that's so bad that you guys were.
it's Highland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's been.
So are we moving on to the citywide
Yeah, I guess we'll move on to citywide yard sales.
yard sale? And you said we had one,
We were supposed to have one, I guess, early in May.
yeah, that's the one we're talking about.
So, yeah, and then the question is, do you want to have one in June?
Do we-
Just wait till September?
See, and I was hoping to possibly have one in June as long as we can agree.
Thanks, Keith.
I don't remember when the second
Thanks, sir.
one
Appreciate
typically is. I think the second one's in September or October.
First or second weekend usually.
Yeah.
So what if we talk about just scrapping the one we had now and just going with the one in September?
Either that, or you're going to have to say we're going to make it July and September or something like that.
Yeah, or that, yeah.
But it might be easier since everything else is just everybody's kind of understanding that things are getting canceled right now. I mean, that doesn't keep somebody from, getting their own permit and having one through the summer.
Right.
But the free one,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Well, what if we
Because
did
of-
2 weekends in September?
So like early and then late September?
Yeah.
I know I'm okay with that too.
I like that idea.
Maybe first week of September.
First week,
last week.
first week in September, last week in
I
September.
think, let me see here. I want to say that the one in September was always like that first. I
Like
want to
this-
say it was like
this-
that first Friday, that
This
first
year
Friday,
should be like
Saturday.
the 4th, I think.
Yeah, the fourth and fifth.
Yeah.
I think that's what it usually is. That first Friday, Saturday. Because that's Labor Day weekend, and everybody is kind of out and about anyway.
And then
Or we
what's the
could say,
last
hey,
week
we're
in
gonna
September?
Well, when you do them back to back, almost like that, or that close, they're sometimes not as effective. What about the first weekend in August, first weekend in September?
I like that idea.
I can, yeah.
That gives people, 2 different months to do it. That way we still kind of get them both in and give people the opportunity that want to participate in that.
So we're kind of looking at like the 31st of July, the 1st and 2nd of August. Because typically it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
No
It's
Sundays.
just 2 days?
It's just Friday, Saturday. They're never allowed on Sundays, I don't think,
Okay.
technically.
So we're looking at August 1st and 2nd and September 4th and 5th?
Yeah, September would be the 4th and 5th. The August one, you want to do 7, 8, since the 1st is on a Saturday? There's still 4 weeks, 4 weekends.
Yeah, we can do the.
7th and 8th, yeah, which is the
7th and
first
8th.
full, 7th and 8th of August and the 4th and 5th of September.
I think that'll give us time to kind of gauge where things are at. Things are starting to open up. Is it going to be working? Is it not? And we can
Right.
always come back and scrap it if we
Yeah.
need to be. If that's the way we need to go, we can just
It
scrap it.
at least gives people the opportunity.
Yeah, and I think this gives them the understanding, hey, we do have it scheduled and we can look forward to this if everything works out well.
Sounds good. All right, moving on. I guess we can, since we combined 3 and 5, we'll just put that as the last one.
And move on to the
And
building.
we'll move on to the building department fees. I know, Mr. Gabbard, you put this in the committee, so I kind of want you to go over what you are looking.
Well, there is a proposed, do you guys get that one? He gave it to us at the last one. I still
Probably.
have it here.
Did, but I didn't see it.
What the, and it's not like crazy amounts. They're, so like the first one that you see here, the total valuations, from $1 to 3,000 is 54.
Right.
It would go to 70. So they're not like crazy amounts. I want to say it's, what is it? It's right at,
So is that $1 to 3,000 valuation of the project or the property?
I'm not sure.
Because I'll tell you right now, a lot of people, they're doing something that's,
according to
That's
what
according
you're
to
going
what
to
you're
do.
putting in.
Yeah,
So if you're
including
doing a
new structures,
$3,000
additions,
job,
alterations.
If you're doing a $3,000 job, you would pay $70 for that permit.
Yeah.
what's wrong with our current pay schedule? Is it
Well,
not? Is it
one of the
fine?
things is, do you realize that all the schools are not paying any permits or anything?
Why is that?
Because back in like 2008 or 9, when the schools were having financial issues, the city said, hey, we'll cut you a break. We won't charge you for any permits. But then they passed levy. Nothing was ever done. They got money. And now they're doing all this multi-million-dollar stuff.
Yeah.
Now, not only do they not pay permits, but it costs us because we still have to go do
Yeah.
the inspections. We have to do plan reviews and
Right.
all that. That they don't pay for any of that.
Yeah.
And I know we've missed out on some of that, but they still got 2 buildings that, or at least as far as the elementaries.
Yeah, Norview and Williams.
Yeah, and so I don't know if they're going to do anything to the high school.
I mean, was that something passed by council that we're not going to charge them?
Back then they changed it to where the school didn't have to pay any fees.
So why don't
And
we
I'm not
just
trying to
repeal that?
not nitpick the schools. I just don't think it's fair.
Exactly.
I mean, if we're
you know.
providing a service and
But now we're the ones in
Yeah.
kind of financial need.
Right.
We need them to kind of step up and pay their fees, and just like anybody else would have to do. And
I mean,
and all
I
that.
think that's something that needs to be brought up and revised. And
right. And
Yeah.
so when we're talking with the building department, we've not changed our fees, and I want to say like the number that's popping out of my head from talking with the building department was like, we've not changed them in like 10 years. I mean, it's been several years that we've not changed any type of fee structure on this. And like I said, it's not like the city, like Cincinnati,
In how many
did
years?
theirs. It's been a lot. I forget what Mark said, but it's been several years since we've revised or upgraded any of that. And, some of this it's just, there's a lot of cost and especially all the inspections and things like that. And, right now we're in a kind of a boom. People are doing lots to the property. They're buying these properties. The housing stock, the property values are going up, which is outstanding for us. And that's great for all of us. We just need to make sure that we're getting recouped. We're not trying to make a bunch of money out of the building department. All we're trying to do is say, hey, we need to get recouped for the building, the site, the plan reviews, all that
Right.
goes in down there, and then going out, doing an inspection, coming back, going back, doing another inspection and all that. Just making sure that we're getting recouped so that department's not losing money. Which I think, I'm not sure if we're losing or just barely breaking even on that particular department. So I just thought it might be a good idea now to look at that, to make sure that everybody's,
Yeah.
having-
So you're saying there's a new proposed fee schedule?
Yeah, Mark gave it to us at the last, remember when we did have one meeting like March?
Yeah.
He gave it to us, and I have it here, so I'll make sure to get you guys copies. But yeah, like just looking at that first one, if you went down to the next one, the next column, 15,000 to 16,000, currently he's at 139, it would go to 180, so it's not that,
$41 difference.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the other one, I think, is
Fees for
16.
over,
What about the 500,000 or more? Right now it's $2,857 for the first 500,000, and then $5 for each additional 1,000 over that. What would that change to?
well, right now it says 28,057, right, or 2857, $2,857 for the first 500,000,
Yeah.
plus $5 for each additional 1,000. Here it would be 3714 for the first 500,000, plus 650 for the for any additional 1,000 therefore. So it's not that much, it's $1.50 per
It's
thousand.
It's not going to break banks and
No,
cause
no, no.
people to not want to develop because
Right.
they're going to have to
Yeah,
pay.
because I would definitely be against that, because we don't want, and that's residential.
Yeah.
We don't
It
want,
doesn't-
So
Doesn't
for
seem
a
like
$1
it's-
million project, it's going to be like a $5,000 thing.
yeah, that's just for, that first page is just residential. The commercial's on the other ones. So like the commercials on the other ones, it jumps up a little bit more.
Yeah.
But, yeah, for residential, it's not
I mean,
that.
if we have somebody coming in with a $500,000 or more residential permit,
Yeah.
Well, there was one on Sloan just sold for 4+, man.
well, yeah, but I'm saying, if they come in and they want to do $500,000 to a house,
Yeah.
that's a massive improvement to
Yeah.
a house.
Yeah, there's
Maybe eventually.
A McMansion
somebody,
coming out of
somebody's
that
got
A
an issue there.
McMansion. Yeah. All right. But yeah, I guess, so what do we want to?
So what we would do is,
Just want to report out that we agree with it.
what we can do is we can give the new proposed and ask the law department to make a new, make an ordinance adopting the proposed fee increase for the building department, and also include the, that the school system or any other project that's going on has to, pay their fees and their fair share.
Yeah. I mean, I agree.
And I wouldn't even mind giving them a discount, saying, hey, the school system, theirs is, 5% less than what normal. I wouldn't mind, it's up to you guys, but I wouldn't mind even doing that, because, they are Norwood, it's all the same. It's taxpayer dollars that's paying for all these fees, but they should be paying something. They got to pay half of what the fee is, or, something like that. The school system pays,
I would
goes
say-
in, and their fee is 50% less, because that's still taxed out payer dollars. They're
Yeah.
paying for that, but they still got to get a permit and pay for it, because
Yeah, I'm fine with something like that, and
just at least so we can cover our employees going and taking care
yeah,
of
because
it.
I don't think we can really afford to be doing anything for free right now.
Well, and that's what we are.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with like adding in a 5% discount for the schools.
Or 10%.
You want
Yeah.
10%?
Yeah.
5 wouldn't really.
Yeah.
Well, I can do
I mean,
10.
I don't
I'm good
even,
with that.
seriously, I don't mind a 50%. It's just that, that way, it's covering our cost of the employee going to do those kind of things.
Right,
But
I
but
think
10%, I'm good with that.
I think 50% might. We'd be
For the
at,
school,
like
because it's
50% the
like I said,
cost.
it's 50%, 10%, the school gets a 10%,
Yeah.
discount, and we have to make sure that that's legal.
Yeah, because they have their levy and their bond issue that they passed, and they're working on the buildings and
Yeah.
improving them. But like you said, that's taxpayer money as well. That's not just free money that they're
Right.
going to be able to.
And we want to see that stuff happen. We
Yeah.
want our schools to improve and stuff like that. We just want to make sure that our employees getting paid for
Yeah.
the work that they're
Especially
doing.
if we're looking at commercial buildings doing the same type of projects, but they're paying for the permit and the schools aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Next. That was quick.
Yeah.
Two
Then
of
we
them.
just have,
Two of them in under 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's not bad. So now we just have to discuss what our project is, and it looks like we only got one assigned
So-
to us.
Huh?
We only got one assigned to us?
We've got three, it looks like. We've got number 7, number 9, and number 19. But a lot of this, I think, goes into what we're wanting to look at for our internal audit and how we want to approach the internal
don't-
audit.
See, I interpreted that that's the department that's in charge of writing that policy.
Well, that's what we were discussing before the meeting was, you know,
Because the only one that's shown as far as a committee is just the one, and that's number 9. The other ones are like Finance Committee has a couple.
yeah,
The
I mean,
auditor has some.
I'm looking at these and I only highlighted water
Yeah.
since we were coming into this and
Oh, okay.
so
You're adding what we're discussing in here.
yeah,
But as far as tasks,
because he gave this to me since we were going to go into the discussion of how we're going to do the internal audit.
yeah,
So he said that might be good for you to go ahead and discuss now with these requirements from the state auditor. So when I looked through this, I saw water department 3 times and marked those 3 items.
okay, I see what you're saying now.
But the big thing that we were discussing was, I guess, Mayor Schneider has
Tom?
what's the group that discusses the union contracts?
Oh, the attorney's
The
office?
attorney's office. He's
Yeah.
got them going over doing policy and procedure for the water department. That's what
Okay,
he said the last meeting,
okay.
which kind of goes into number 9 because it says, you know, how many times can it be estimated, limits on payment plans. That should all be within that policy and procedure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I would think.
right.
And same with the pay-ins. The
On
pay-ins.
number 7,
Number 7,
Yeah.
that should be within the policies and procedures.
right.
And then invoices that are mailed out, that should be within policies and procedures.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I can't really do much on this stuff here until I get what the policies and procedures that the attorneys are coming up with.
right. Once they come up with that, then we can make it more strict if we wanted
correct.
to, or,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't really report out to Mr. Miracle that we've completed these because we can't complete them until we get these policies in.
right.
But I think if we can kind of start structuring where we want to go with our internal audit, meaning I think if we throw 3 of us and 2 residents on there,
Well, 3 of us being 3 council members,
yeah,
not of the same committee.
that way you've got a decent variety.
Mhm.
We were thinking Mr. DiNardo because he's part of the finance and
Yeah.
you know, he can look at the financial aspect of the audit, and then maybe the 2 of us.
2 of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you want to be a part of it, and
I'm good.
I'll step away.
No, I'm good, man. This is seriously, you guys have taken the reins on this, and you, I mean, you have particular,
Yeah.
like, vision.
Well, we
so-
want to ask Mr. Donardo because I mean, Ms. Bonzel had helped us with this, but being in the same committee, it's kind of
We didn't-
sketchy.
We didn't want it to
So,
violate any
otherwise-
sunshine laws or anything.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Right.
we would be asking Mr. Bonzel instead of Mr. Donardo because he's kind of helped us with this, and it'd be nice for us to all see it through. But Andy's had past finance chair experience, and he's good with that kind of thing as well. But since we're on the same committee on this
Mr.
committee,
Thompson might be a good pick.
yeah,
But I would, I like the fact of, you said including picking a couple residents.
Yeah, we were looking at possibly 2 residents, because I wanted to have an odd number on there.
Sure, yeah, oh, yeah.
Because if we have 6 and we end up coming out and talking about it, and 3 of us agree to one thing, 3 of us agree to another.
Well, that's where you might want to have 3 residents and just the 2 of you. That
And then
way
just
you can
run
have
things by Eric.
you can just have an audit meeting, and you don't have to call, otherwise you got to call a committee meeting, because there would be 3 council people.
Well, no, because that's why we were doing one outside of the committee.
But we still have 3 council people talking. You'd have to have a committee meeting. Because you can't talk about a particular issue
Okay.
like that.
So,
So I would
2 of
have
us
you
and
2, 3
3
citizens.
citizens.
Yeah, and then that way you guys can just talk about it, and then you can bring it to a committee.
Mhm.
You can take it to finance and just say, hey, can I have I'm going to bring this up, or
Go over
or
it.
throw it to them and just say, hey, look this over. And we would, like your input on what we've come up with so far. You could do it that way. But if you have 3, council people, regardless of what you're on, then you can't do that. You could have
And
2.
So I think what we were kind of going over is having these residents, since we're looking at 3, and I love the idea. Love it. See?
Well, plus it's, I just love the fact that you want to include the residents like that, because, we need their buy-in.
Right. And I think, us walking into the water department,
They know who we are.
they know who we are, they know why we're there. If we go and we have 3 residents that go on 3 different days, as a blind audit, and saying, these are the questions we want you to ask, and find out the information and report back to us, it'll catch them a little off guard, I guess, so that we can get
Well, just make sure that we're
real
being
facts.
consistent in the department.
We can get real facts, real
Yeah.
information.
It's not that we're trying to catch anybody.
No.
We just
It's
want to make
get
sure
a real
that,
everyday running of it, where they're
right,
not
it's being
acting
consistent.
differently.
Yeah, we just want to show a pattern of consistency.
And,
Yeah.
and
And
I-
that'll be key if we have 3 different residents going at 3 different times, and they're like, hey, we walked in and they were very helpful. They were able to show us this, this, and this, and that is going to be awesome to show, hey, this process is working, and we're working towards a solution there, while we kind of fact find on our end as well. Yeah, I agree.
I think the other thing that we wanted to come up with is, what are we going to ask when we go, what do we want these residents to look into? And, we have our ideas. I'm sure you've got
Well,
some ideas.
that's where, when we get this from the attorney group, when we get the policies back from that, that'd be a perfect thing to sit down and just say, what do you guys think of how these policies are?
Right. And what I kind of wanted to do was do the initial one. I'm hoping by at least June. Go through the month of June doing the initial audit.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we get the policies and procedures and we start going, we've told them, hey, here's your policies and procedures. These have been identified. Go back with those residents and say, we want you to go back one more time to see if they're following these. So that way we have one audit before and one audit after.
Yeah, and which, I think you got to get that baseline of following, what are we doing now?
Correct.
So you go in, you say, okay, look, I'm a resident, I'm bringing in my water bill, here's my numbers. What happens then?
Right. And that's one of the things that
Does
we
it get
brought up.
filed?
Does
You
it go
put
into
it
a
in
box?
immediately?
Does it go into a file? Does it
Yeah.
go into the computer immediately when you get it?
Right.
What happens?
So we find out that whole process of, from the time that they get a number or they don't get a number, both occasions, through them sending the bill out.
Yeah.
Because I think what we're going to find, both internal and external and all these different, people looking into this, I think what we're going to find is there's a major problem with the software.
Yeah, that's where
We don't, and I'm sure of it.
First
We don't have
glance.
a problem with the personnel
and that's
at all.
And I would like to try and do at least an initial audit before that new software gets put in.
Oh, yeah.
We can physically and trying to
Saying
think
we're
of
going to do
the
the
word.
audit
We can
before the
actually
software
say,
is put in, or?
yes,
can
it was
see,
the software.
right.
You know, it wasn't human error. It wasn't, it was the software that wasn't recording properly. Now we fixed that software. We're good.
I mean, I think if there's any human error as far as like, people not doing a good enough job, I think it maybe, the oversight in the past of the department to say, hey, this is good policy and procedure, this is bad policy and procedure.
There weren't no policy and procedure. That's pretty much it.
Well,
It was
then
just
there you
like,
go.
so you
that's
get
bad.
poor Sally
Yeah.
that comes into the water department, and she's been doing things, and then because there was a problem last year where Sally, there was some accusations that Sally, there was some money issues and stuff like that. Come to find out, that's the way Sally was taught. She reported it
Yeah.
like this. The deputy auditor says, no, it's actually should be reported like this. And once they look at that, it's all cleared up. It's all fine.
Yeah.
It's just that she didn't really have good training or proper training because there's no true set policy procedures, and this is how we do it. This is step A, B, C. And so it's like I said, I'm here to say I want to go. I'll go as far as to say we don't have a personnel problem. We have a software problem and the fact that the people weren't trained properly
Yeah.
because we don't have policies and procedures. Once we get these in place and we get the new software, I think that you'll see the problems go away.
Yeah, and that's probably going to be exactly the outcome, like I would think.
And that's
Yeah.
what I'm hoping the outcome
yeah.
is.
Because we're going to do our audit, we're going to see, and they've got somebody in there. After we initially brought this to council, they got a third person in there that, from my understanding, is doing some training, helping to make sure they are doing things the way they should be done.
Yeah.
And working on that policies and procedures aspect. And I think that, and we're getting the software. And so from talking like Zim and I believe Vic a couple times was saying, but it'll take about a month after we get that software for the training to be complete on there with the new software. So, and I think that
If you could find 3 residents that haven't maybe called their numbers in yet, or you can ask more. You could just document, hey, here's 6 residents. 3 of them called their numbers in. 3 of them dropped their card off, and then kind of track those through. You could see then
like a blind.
yeah, it's yeah. And you just watch to see what those are. Now, if they're in before the new software, and then you do it again when our next cycle comes out, and they're with the new software, and you see how that process goes with the new
the same
policies and
residents?
yeah, with the same ones. And then you have new policy and procedures and going because this is something that we need to really balance of what we currently have and doing, opposed to what we're getting with the new software
Yeah.
and how that changes with policy and procedures and such.
Yeah, I think that's a good
I think
idea.
that's when we're going to change and see some things. But if you had some to at least physically track these 3, we want to track these 3 residents, these addresses, and these 3 called theirs in. These 3
You suggested having who look at that? And tell them who.
your audit committee.
So the audit would track the.
Yeah, the audit would track, say, and you could do 10. I mean, if you got 10 people out there that haven't called their numbers in yet, you could have 5 of them they call their numbers in, leave it on the voicemail or whatever they do, and then 5 of them actually drop their card off. And just see if there's a difference even there. Because, the funny thing is my landlord last fall, called me and the girl upstairs, and he sent us a message saying, hey, can you guys check the pipes and everything like that, because the water bill was a lot higher than it normally is, and we're checking and everything like that, and we're like, he's like, all right, not a problem, I'll deal with it, and he just paid it and went on. But then all this started coming through. I'm like, obviously he had a problem too,
Yeah.
because we were checking everything. We were checking
Right.
every faucet, every trap, everything
that's-
to make sure there's no drips.
And I got an email from a resident who said, yeah, I'm hiring or I hired a plumber, he came in, he checked, nothing was leaking, so there's a problem down there, I'm gonna decide how I proceed from here. And I've explained to several residents, look, I've had several emails and several calls of residents calling in and saying, hey, I sent the blue card in, they found the blue card, they inputted it, and we adjusted properly because it wasn't inputted right into the system.
Yeah.
Well, and I had a resident also ask, so say there are issues, and we find known issues of, hey, you know, accounts were not being entered properly, or the data was being lost, or something of that sort. How are we going to rectify this to every resident? And my first thought is, and I'm sure we might be able to find this out going forward, is that if you haven't called in and alerted them of an error on the account that they could fix, then how could they go back and find every error?
Right.
Right.
So when they're talking about, you know, hey, are we going to be credited our account, or is that money going to be given
But I
back?
think people, yeah, they're going to have, but they'll be able to go back and look. You say, okay, this is what my number is now, and this is what my number is before. But, you know, I think we've got a lot of people, too, that, you know,
Say they called in but haven't.
they weren't calling, they're stopped calling those numbers in.
Well,
They're-
that's why I think if we have.
And part of that problem is, my property, I just noticed yesterday that where Jim would normally go in, the basement door, is where they left the blue card. I just, because I was doing some lawn kind of stuff and trying to do what I can one-armed,
Yeah.
I happened to notice, I'm like, oh, I would have never noticed that otherwise. And, you know, my landlord wouldn't have got that, and he'd have had to have it estimated. Whereas
See,
it
I-
should be, just put it on a front door
I
somewhere.
think maybe
Yeah.
that's something within our policy and procedure that we put in there, that the water meter, leave it at the front door.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess we've got to come up with something for apartment buildings.
right. Mine's a two-family, that's why I say that. You know, put it at number one, because that's usually if it's,
I
you
mean,
know,
I'm sure-
owner occupied.
I'm sure an attentive landlord's going to say to you, hey, did you find a blue card for me?
Yeah.
Can you mark down the numbers, or,
What I usually do is I see that card, I'll go downstairs, call it in, and then I write the numbers in there for him, and then I leave that with my rent for the landlord,
Right.
so he has a copy, and I put the time and date, I write on there time and date that I recorded it and called it in, so he has all that.
right. And I think that's something we need to look at and make sure that's in that policy and procedure, that our meter reader is leaving it at the proper place instead of in an inconspicuous place.
Right.
That somebody's not always going to be.
Yeah, and it doesn't get found, or it gets, you know, wind blows and
Right.
suddenly it's gone and no one even realized.
So what questions are we looking to answer when we have somebody go ask? I mean, I've got process of the blue card, the process that the blue card goes
Yeah.
through, the process that the call-ins go through, and I guess we can get more specific on that. Is it, you know,
That's a good question. There again, I think that those kind of questions, I would see what, you know, the citizens that you draw into this, what kind of questions would you have?
okay.
When you go into the water department, what kind of questions would you have?
Yeah, because they might
And
have
then
some questions that we wouldn't think of.
Right.
And what I would think is, for this audit group is, in the program, look into the 10-unit minimum.
Well, I know every city has that.
Not 10.
Every city has a minimum.
Yeah, a minimum. I'm saying is it worth looking into that and seeing if we can attach some of this to lower that as well? Or is that a completely
I think
separate thing in your opinion?
one thing that I was trying to do, and I've been so bogged down with everything between council and everything. I mean, we both have a whole lot on our plate, and I know you do too. Trying to do a lot of stuff within a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Is I wanted to call Greater Cincinnati Waterworks and find out why we're paying $38 a unit versus Cincinnati, who's paying $31. You know, we're $7 higher than Cincinnati. Why is that?
Is that what we charge?
I don't know.
because we have 4 intakes into Norwood, and that's where it, the city said, Cincinnati says, this is what we sent you.
Right.
And then we add that additional $7 on there to take care of our cost.
So maybe it's, okay. Well, see, that's why I wanted to find out, why are we paying so much higher?
Right, so the city bills us
Yeah.
Right.
31,
Right.
or whatever. That's from what comes into to the city.
Mhm.
Now, what goes to your house and what you use and what's on your
That may
meter,
not be 38.
that you're going to be paying 37 on whatever you use. We're
Right.
paying 31 what we use, the city uses.
Mhm.
So that additional is, paying for our water department.
Because what,
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be going towards like the maintenance of the infrastructure, the pipes, and
Yeah.
the water department and all that stuff. So
Right.
It's so we're not just running a break-even operation.
I think one of the things we need to find out is, what are we charging as a city per unit?
Right.
Are we charging 38 or are we charging 50? That makes
That
sense?
should be easy.
That should be easy to find because SSD sets those rates.
I'm trying to find the picture here that I took of.
I'm not exactly sure, but when I was looking it up, I believe Cincinnati has something around like 3 or 4 units minimum.
So, City of Cincinnati, this says, in addition to our rates being among the lowest in the region, yeah, this is put out by the City of Cincinnati. They're paying $31.02. And this is a rate effective January 1st of this year. And we're paying $39.10.
They're paying 31.02. So we add $8 on per unit. to
Which the
maintain.
minimum unit of 10 is $80 minimum more than Cincinnati.
Yeah, I would be okay with 5 on that.
Yeah.
But that, I mean,
Especially, there's a lot of elderly people out there that are complaining or very upset that because they don't use that much, and it's a little unfair. I feel like. And if you're going to use 10 a month, you're going to use the 10. If you're only using 4.5 or 5.
Yeah.
And the minimum's 5.
well, what if you're a snowbird
Yeah.
and you go to Florida for 6 months of the year, and you just have somebody check on your house, and you're paying, that those 10 units minimum for 6
Yeah.
months of the year that there's no one even there flushing the toilet.
Right.
See, and I think that 10 units that is coming, I think that's the water actually physically just coming in. Like the fair share deal of, hey, Cincinnati's providing the water, we've got to pay them something.
I think it's an upcharge that was put in years ago that is not effective anymore and needs to be gone.
That's a good question for the mayor and the safety service director, and just to see what their thoughts are on that. Clint would be another good one.
Yeah.
Does he think that that's 10 is a fair number, or would 5, just for somebody that's not using any water at all, or barely any, to get a minimum of 10? Is that fair? That would probably be the question is,
Yeah.
is that really a fair number for somebody that's not using any water?
That average uses 4. Or even none, like you said, in some cases. I'm sure there's people that do vacation elsewhere and
That's the people that's going to get that is
yeah.
that, or a vacant building,
So, like in this says, water service charges per month for residential use, amount paid monthly, even if no water is used, and the meter size.
Yeah.
So, what are our typical meters? Half inch?
I don't know.
I think they're half inch or a quarter inch, I mean. So like inside the city of Cincinnati, with a quarter inch meter, no water usage at all. Number stays the same every month. They're paying $8.52. So if they get a bill each month for $100, which is what I've kind of averaged out, I think, for the city of Cincinnati, that's less than 1%. They're charging less than 1% for minimum water usage?
Yeah, that can't be right. Unless they just do a standard. You know, instead of saying it's 10 units, they just say it's this, you know, or we could say.
And I think that's
we
what
could
they're
do the
doing,
same
is
thing,
they're just
yeah.
saying it's that.
You have a minimum of $20, you know. Your lowest bill for water is going to be $20 or something like that.
Like a service fee.
Yeah, and that's up to, you know, however many units that covers.
Yeah.
Once you go over that allotted amount, then you know you're paying.
And I think that would be a good way to go into it, is just a solid
Standard number.
standard of $20 for everybody.
Just a
plain and
rate
simple.
instead of a unit number.
Right.
Because right now, I mean, whatever that 10 units is that's the standard number. Same thing. It's just.
I mean, everybody that live in their house has to have water. So people aren't going to stop using water in Norwood.
Right. So it's
I think
only
having
for.
that 10 unit minimum is just a handicap crutch to get more money.
Yeah, but you got to also make sure that the line is still serviceable. There needs to
Yeah.
be some, but like I said, for, you know, you got, you know, businesses maybe that aren't.
But if we're upcharging that $7-8 per unit used or whatever, okay, that's what pays for that maintenance and that's what pays for the water department. We shouldn't be doing that on the backs of people who don't use that water.
Yeah, if you're not using
You know.
water, you shouldn't have to pay for it. I mean,
Yeah, that's where I'm going with that. I mean, if I'm using more water, I'm going to pay more for maintenance because I'm using more.
you're paying. Yeah, you're paying more.
So maybe we can somehow kind of tie that in and include that. So how do we look for residents? Last bit.
Do we want to ask for
Ask for-
resumes type situation? Do we want to just, between us, say, do we have somebody in mind, and ask them if
Well,
they
you
want
could
to do
ask. You could just ask people you know, or you could ask on your show. But then you
Yeah.
determine we want to have, you know, so many single family, so many two family, or because if it's two family, well, two family owned. You own this two family,
Yeah.
so you could do single pet family, two family, and an apartment building. You know, a 4-unit or something like that. See, you know, say we're looking for people that own, you know, a single family, that own a two family, and we own that, and you would want the same number that you do pre-new software and post-new software.
It's like 2 single family, 2 multifamily,
Yeah.
and 2 4-unit or higher.
And you just see how those processes work, how data gets entered, how data comes out from that, from those. That way you have, you know, that's a pretty good cross-section, because you have before and after, you have, you know, single, double, and, you know, 4. I think that's, you know, you've got to see what those numbers work.
Yeah. Wow. I like that.
Actually, on two families, or, I mean, not on two families, on some, because on two families, you're looking for a single meter though, right? But on 4 families, are they, that's what you want to make sure it's clarified too. You don't want somebody's got a 4 family, but they have 4 meters, because
Right.
that's just a single family, you know,
Yeah.
more or less meter. You're looking for 1 meter that covers So I don't think you're going to get 4 families. You're probably going to get, because there's only one for us. And
Well,
it's
if
for
we just
both.
take the 4 unit and hire whatever out of it, do 2 single family, two families.
Yeah, or
I
3
think-
and 3. I would do 3 and 3. Get 6. I think that's
And I got a
it.
couple people in mind. I'm sure
Yeah.
people will reach out and email us, and I'm gonna put it out on my page that we're looking for people to come out and be a part of this audit and to email.
Yeah, you might get to where you got 10 and 10, you know, and which is nice too. It's always, you can't.
And if
go
it's
Yeah,
just
wrong
us,
with
we can
numbers.
get together
It's
and kind of
nice.
pick and choose people.
I
and-
don't want to have like 100 people come to me
No.
and go, hey, I want to be a part of this.
Hey,
And then it just
we would
starts
have
say, I
there.
already
plenty
got
to
it.
choose from there. Yeah, we can say, hey, so send an email with your, your name, and if you're single family or 2 family owner.
Name, address, single
But then
family.
also say, hey, you're not planning on moving in the next, this year, are you?
Yeah, at least
Because
like
we
6 months.
we want the same. We don't want a lot. We just want the normal. We don't want, hey, you were here, and then suddenly
Yeah.
another family moved in, but they had less people in that house, and
Yeah.
obviously, you want it to be the same, and kind of see how that process goes.
Yeah, I think that's fair and that's nice. I think that'll be clear, very clear, to kind of see the before and after. And we can kind of come up with something like a checklist per account, like was the numbers entered properly? Was the bill conflicted, non-conflicted?
Now, the committee will need to. You'll have to say, hey, you got to give us that reading that you're submitting.
Yeah.
That way you can put that on a sheet and just say,
Right.
okay, and then that way you can ask, was the number entered properly? Did the software recognize,
Yeah.
did the software make the calculations appropriately? The
Yeah,
old software,
like
the new
was there an
software.
issue with your bill or was there not?
Right.
And if there was it resolved? Rate customer service 1 to 5, stuff like that. I can come up with a sheet that we can give to the residents that they can write on there, like their address, their account, their name, that they give to us.
Yeah,
And we can go over those
And-
and
And one thing I do
pass,
want
fail.
one thing I
number
do
one.
want to specify that, I don't know how many people are going to actually watch this committee meeting, but if they are watching this and they do get this information about us and want to
Yeah.
send their information in, I don't want somebody coming in and saying, writing down, well, I wrote this number down, but really it wasn't the number they wrote down. I want to make sure we have honest residents.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
want it to be fair. We want,
right.
we
Because
don't
we're
want
not
people-
trying to
Yeah.
trying to catch anybody into anything.
Right.
We want to make sure that
That's-
we are able to, because like I said, we're pretty sure there's a software problem.
Right.
So if we have the right numbers going in, that we know here these are good numbers and they go in, but the software didn't process it correctly, that's we have proof that
Yeah.
we had 10 of these submitted and we only had 3 of them were actually correct. That's a
Yeah,
problem.
and we think, and I agree, I think it's a software issue too, but we can't engineer it to come out as that conclusion. And
Right.
putting the right numbers in, letting the process
Yep.
be done fairly,
Yeah, I don't-
and then evaluate it after.
Like I said, I don't want
I think
residents
we'll-
saying, well, mine was $38.99 last time, and then the real reading was like 40.
Yeah.
And they're saying, no, it was $38.90. I want to make sure that we have residents that are honest, have integrity.
Yeah, well, that's
They
what
got to
we'll
send you a
evaluate.
picture of their reading that they're
Yeah.
sending in.
Yeah, and
And then that way, that's the number you put on your flow chart that
Yeah.
your spreadsheet or whatever that you
Right.
do.
so we can put on there, say, hey, the reading number was this, and we can hand fill that out, or, we can practically blocks where we can put that number in, we can hand fill it out with their name, their address.
Yeah.
And then we can hand them that sheet and say, hey, you're gonna go in, or you're gonna call in the water department and ask about your account and this stuff, and you can write on there, were there issues with your bill? No. I called in, and there's a couple questions they can ask,
We can
and they can rate their
work through that,
service, yeah.
just to figure out how we exactly want to set this up. Because I don't expect anybody to really be emailing us or anything until at least next week.
Yeah.
again, I don't know how many people watch this,
Throw it
but
on your show.
we'll throw it out there this weekend and see if we can get any catches.
Yeah, we'll
or any
definitely promote it
touches.
on there. The best show in town.
But I do like us trying to have the input of the residents because I'm not trying to throw this on anybody else's lap here, but
Right.
I want them to be a part of it. All right. So, do we have anything else on the water department stuff? I mean, I know we haven't really received an update a whole lot from Mayor Schneider, except we've got policy and procedure being developed.
But that's
Yeah, I mean,
huge.
from what I understand is going, they got policy procedure being
Yeah.
developed. They got a third person in there training and helping and assisting.
And I know
And
that
from
third
what
person's
we've-
been helpful.
Yeah, what we've found is people are calling in if they have a problem with their bill, promptly getting helped, getting great customer service, and both parties are walking away happy.
Yeah.
So that is what we want. But I still think it's important with this that we figure out what the issues were, if they're done. If there is no more issues, okay, but we gotta find that out and know what they are or what they were, so that way we can avoid them in the future and keep this going as smooth as possible. So.
Right. I agree.
All right. I guess I'll end this committee meeting and adjourn.